How the heretics. This is Jason, and he got to pick the topic of today, and he picked the cruelty of Jehovah Witness judicial process, because when I was a Jehovah Witness, I thought it was a very nice and loving organization with a very nice and loving judicial protest. But now I know better. It's not. So, Jason, why did you pick that team?
Yeah, because it's something that's close to me. I guess it's the. I should first of all say hello to everybody. Thanks for coming in and listening to me talk about cruelty within Jehovah's Witnesses. But yeah, it's something very close to me. It's probably the wake-up call, or my initial wake-up call within the Jehovah's Witnesses, because I was disfellowshipped twice, and the first judicial committee meeting I never turned up for. It was the second one when I got reinstated, and then they called a second judicial committee for the same crime of immorality. They brought me into a judicial process and asked me extremely invasive questions, and I realized that this is extremely cruel, and I found it extremely shocking the way the process works, and I found it extremely upsetting. And yeah, that's where I'm going with this, with the cruelty. Do you just want me to go and talk about everything about?
Yeah, because you're a grown-up, but basically the same questions would have been if you were a minor or a child.
Yeah, I guess just with a minor or a child, it's they're not going to commit immorality. Not most won't. It'd be very unusual for a young child to be in that process, except if they're in there expecting to get help because of child sexual abuse. Now, in times past, I suppose it would have been extremely cruel because they would have had to face their abuser. And I guess for a child, I can't even comprehend what a child would have to go through when they're coming to adults, be their parents, and then their parents are probably brought them to the elders and trusting the elders that they would help them. And as part of that process, they would think that this is going to be great. I've got all these adults on my side.
Yeah, because that's the point. If you have a witness watching this, he will just say that you're a terrible person and I'm a terrible person because you have this trust in the elders. You trust them so much, and you're always told. I remember they would always say it like 3 times, so you get the impression that you get 3 times. They will say if someone commit a serious sin, the elders try to help him, and if you commit a serious sin, the elders try to help him, and if you still don't repent, in the end he might get it. So you get this feeling that you have 3 strikes and you get a lot of help, but instead it's like you can get kicked out the first time if you don't answer right to these questions.
Yeah, I guess I can't really answer that because the first time I got disfellowshipped, I was just turned 20, and I met a girl I actually worked with, and I liked her, and she liked me, and I didn't care. I just, I'd only got baptized 18 months beforehand. So then they called the judicial process. And as a young kid at that age, I'm just kind of going, yeah, whatever. Call it. I ain't going. It really annoyed my mother. But yeah, I ended up going out with that girl for just a short bit. And then guilt set in. And then my mom was, you got to get reinstated. You got to get reinstated and leave that girl and whatever else. So I left that girl and got reinstated about 13 months after being disfellowshipped. So being disfellowshipped the first time, I never got the opportunity to figure out whether they would give you a chance to stay in. I believe they would, because one of my friends who was also in the same congregation as me, he had marital problems and he went off with another woman, and he ended up in the judicial, and his was very different to my second one, and we were having a chat about it over pints, and he said they didn't even want to disfellowship me. He says they were trying everything just to keep me in. I said, geez, I would have loved if they'd done that for me. I says it seemed like all they wanted to do was find ways to get rid of me, and they succeeded. It's like they just didn't want me in the club, So it's I guess it all depends. If it is a first time, maybe it's one rule. If it's a second time, then if it's a second time and it's in between a 5-year period, It's basically, and you committed the exact same sin again, which I had done. So if you bear in mind, I got disfellowshipped in I seek no more. I got disfellowshipped in what year was it? In 1997. I got reinstated in March 1998, and then I got disfellowshipped again in October. Well, they put down the date as November 1st, but the judicial process took place over a period of days in October 2001. So it was 3 years between getting reinstated and getting disfellowshipped the second time that they called that meeting, and they basically just disfellowshipped me. It didn't matter. I mean, I confessed. I was really sorry. It didn't really matter. I guess I didn't know that there's this 5-year rule. If a 5-year period had passed or been 6 years, I would have been treated the same way as if it was the first time. But you have this 5 years that, well, it shows that there's a repeat of the sin, which kind of shows that you're not really repentant. That's one thing. And then the other thing was, well, others in the congregation know. So if others in the congregation know, well, really you're kind of screwed, because they have to be seen to be doing something about it. And if it's kind of a gross sin like sexual immorality, well, then it doesn't matter what you do in that process, what questions you ask or answer, or how you answer them, or how much you cry, or how upset that you are, or how much you pray to Jehovah. It doesn't matter. You're just going to be disfellowshipped. And that's what happened to me. I mean, I was asked so many invasive questions, and I was so shocked. I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at guys who are, sorry.
So basically you had sex with someone and you admitted to them, and they ask for additional information.
Yeah. Well, they basically want you to repeat the whole thing, the whole sexual experience. So what you did with that girl. So you need to be able to relate every little that last bit, where you sat, how you sat, where you lay, how much your penis went in or out, how often you did it, how long it went on for. Did you grope her breasts? Did you feel her boobs, or did you feel her bum, or did you do all this? Was she completely naked? Was she partially naked? Was she this, that, and the other? And I'm not making any of this stuff up. These are the type of questions they're asking.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a bit uncomfortable saying all the things that discussed, because I was shocked by them, so shocked, because you're looking at these men that you know all your life, who you trusted all your life, that you put your life in their hands, literally, because that's the way we're trained, is that the elders are there for us and will help us. And I'm like, he didn't really ask that. It nearly looks like he's getting off on it. And you're wondering, well, what does that question, or the answer to that question, have to do with anything? How does that show whether you're repentant or not? Because, I mean, if I tell him or her, or, well, they're all fellas, but if I tell them that I stuck my penis in so far, or whatever, or I rubbed it against whatever, or she did whatever, how does that got anything to do with repentance? Isn't repentance about saying sorry, about saying I regret it?
So the elders' books say that, they have to find if you're repentant. And how do we find out if you're repentant? Well, and I think it specifically say that tears does not show that you're repentant. Yeah. But if you answer all the question, that shows you're repentant. So they might just, let's say we established the crime that you had sex with a woman and you're grown up both, and so there's like no other police involved or anything. It's just you had sex with a grown woman. But then they will ask everything just to see if you are humble. That's the whole idea. They can ask you like for 45 minutes about how erect were your penis on a scale from 1 to 10 and stuff like that, because they already knew what happened. They just want to see if you are willing to humiliate yourself. That's the whole thing.
And that's exactly, and this goes back to the whole cruelty. That's just pure utter cruelty. That's like because you cannot physically hit people, you can mentally and psychologically harm people, and keep whacking them as hard as you possibly can mentally, and that's exactly what they're doing in these judicial commission meetings, especially regarding anything that's got to do with immorality. I mean, I guess a smoking one is quite a boring one, really, to talk about. It's like, oh, he's smoking. We know what he's done. He's smoked. Is he giving up the fags? Are you giving up the fags? What else can I ask? How have you smoked that fag? Did you really enjoy it?
Yeah.
They're not going to get anything out of a fag. But when it comes to sexual immorality, guys, let's get in here. Let's ask every second last thing we can out of this fella and really, really take it out of him and see how much he regrets what he did. And it's that cruelty that it's sadistic. It's absolutely sadistic. And it's set up sadistically by unknown writers, because we have no clue who wrote these elder manuals. And secondly, when it comes to the whole elder manual, no penitent that goes into one of those judicial committees, unless they're an elder, is aware of that elder manual. I wasn't. I mean, if I'd known about that before I went in there, I probably would never have stepped foot in there. So off you go.
Yeah.
I know what you're going to do to me.
So if there are Jehovah Witnesses watching this, I would like to ask you what you think about this, because the way they would ask a question to Jason and me when I was at judicial meeting and have to be sitting for hours relating all details, they do the same to children. And I know a girl, I will not mention her name, but she was 13 years old, very pretty girl, early bloomer, and she had sex with her worldly boyfriend. And since they were young teenager, I guess it was less than 5 minutes. That's my guess. Anyway, she had to be sitting in a meeting with elders for hours, 3 men, asking her a question about sex. They would not have known it unless she told them. So if it is a religious organization based on where everyone have a responsibility to Jehovah and their conscience, and she already given them the information, is it okay that 3 grown men is sitting asking questions to a 13-year-old girl? Isn't that brazen conduct?
That's not just brazen conduct. That's child abuse. That's pure.
Yeah, well, we could debate the law later. Like, I think it is a crime or should be a crime or and hurtful. But just from the Jehovah Witness perspective, 3 grown men asking a young girl about all the details about sex, it's also a violation of privacy for her worldly boyfriend.
Yeah.
Maybe he don't want the Jehovah Witnesses to take notes about his erection.
Yeah. But I know someone's just asked there is like, what if you refuse to answer? Well, you know what? I wish if I could turn back the clock, I wouldn't have answered any of those questions. I thought answering the questions had something to do with showing that I was repentant, but it didn't matter. I mean, I was repentant. I can't be any more repentant than I was, and we have a legal right not to be able to answer. We talk about the Miranda rights, is that you have a right to remain silent, you have a right to refuse, whatever, and you don't have to answer a single question. I mean, what can they do? They say you need to answer the question. Well, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to be disfellowshipped because you wouldn't answer the questions. Well, then if you're being disfellowshipped, and I mean, why are they asking you questions? Because first of all, you're brought in before a judicial committee because you're guilty, not because you're of anything else. So if you have to answer these questions, then the questions are only there to abuse you as a person. If they already know that you've done these, why are they asking all these invasive questions? Why can they not figure out another way to find out what confession is? I mean, confession should be very simple, just the same way as the Catholic Church is. The priest brings you in, you confess your sins. He says, "Are you sorry for the?" Yeah, I'm confessing them because I'm sorry and I'm repentant and I don't want to repeat them. I mean, why it has to go beyond that? I mean, there's nothing in the scriptures that goes beyond that. The scriptures, if you look at them, they have no kind of judicial process as built by Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, this is very clear by the very fact that the whole judicial process is not written down in any publication and how it works. Because if it was, there'd be no single verse to justify it. There is no verses justifying a judicial process in the way Jehovah's Witnesses have. And it's extremely cruel. They know it's extremely cruel, but they have it there because what they want to do is to be able to abuse people, because it's all part of the control structure, to be able to keep people feeling inferior to these who are the superior men, also known as elders.
It's sad, you know. I used to, when we was witnesses, we had this idea that, you know, as long as you repent, you will not be disfellowshipped. But the fact is, if you say, okay, like I had sex with a woman, consensual, and I go to the elders and say I had sex with a woman, and that's what relevant. And then they ask more and more questions, and I say, I will not answer this question because they're not relevant. Well, then I'll be disfellowshipped. So you're basically disfellowshipped if you refuse to answer. So I would say the disfellowshipping offense is not having sex. The disfellowshipping offense is not answering the questions.
Very good point. That is it.
It
That's
is.
really what it's down to.
You will not be disfellowshipped for having sex. You will be disfellowshipped for not answering the questions.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're a Jehovah Witness, explain this to me. You can leave a message here. Because it's not in the Bible, and it's not fair. Like this girl now, she was 13 years old, and she appealed. First thing, why is it possible to appeal if the elder's never wrong? Why is it possible to appeal? But anyway, she appealed, and then these three guys got to tell, I think they were their father-in-law, about their conclusion. And then they have the same meeting asking her about angles and positions and all these details. And she was disfellowshipped again for she was repenting but not repenting enough. And they would not have known about this unless she told them. So when I went visiting that family, and we were sitting around a table eating food, she had to be eating in another room. That's child abuse.
That's malicious. And you know, that makes me sick that you do that to a child. What do you expect? What do you think is the mental state of that child is as they grow up? That does nothing to benefit anyone. Not a child. You don't do that. I have two children myself. I would never do anything like that. I mean, you put a child in the corner, that's abuse. I mean, people have done. I remember as a kid, and you'd see someone put it in the corner. I tell you what, a child gave me we'll say a teacher gave me a smack across the ass. I didn't mind that. Put me in the corner, man. That really bothered me. That bothered me a lot when I was being put in the corner. And so this whole isolation is abuse. I mean, even the Watchtower admits that it's abuse, you know, and they talk about couples when one spouse uses the silent treatment on the other. They say that's abuse. So why is it not abuse in every other situation? It is abuse in every kind of situation that you use the silent treatment against people to get your own way. And that's what Watchtower is at. They want to get their own way. They want to be able to silence you so that the only thing you have is that you need to come back to us and rely on us because we are God's one true religion. Well, if you're God's one true religion, people will come and return to you because you are God's one true religion, not because you've silenced them and that you've cut them off from all that built up their whole social system, being their families and their friends and whatever else, you know. So it's extremely abusive, extremely controlling, and I guess the part of me wonders why does human rights activists defend this practice? You know, we talk about the bunch of those guys. You know, I'm not going to name them because you know I don't want to give these guys names, but you know they go they run to Jehovah's Witnesses side as soon as Shunning comes in to say that it's okay. Well, I'd like to see them deal with Shunning. If we took away all their family and all their friends for a full year and then come back to them and say, are you going to defend it now? How do you feel about it now? Is it okay? Because, you know, Lester Samra, he posted on the new website I created, the Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses, he posted on there today. You know, he put in a submission, and in his submission, he made it. He gave an example of, you know, we can lose a job, or we can be kicked out of a club, a golf club, or whatever else. You know, and that's fine. You know, people can kick us out of groups. That's no problem. You know, we might do wrong and then kick us out, but it doesn't mean that the people left in the group can't talk to us anymore. Can't talk to us anymore. It doesn't mean we're going to say, "Oh no, you've got to leave your club. You got to leave your golf club and join my golf club, or you have to leave your job." You know, because they kicked me out. Let's go over to the job I'm going to now. It's just ridiculous. It's the same with Jehovah's Witnesses. Why the hell do we want to pull Jehovah's Witnesses out of Jehovah's Witnesses if they want to believe in Jehovah's Witnesses? We don't want to. I don't want to pull anyone. You know, in the 14. I'm 20 years now out of the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I'm 14 years before I kind of woke up. And yet, in all that time, I have never once said to Ma'am, you need to stop believing in Jehovah's Witnesses. I wouldn't do that to her, because it's her right to believe what she wants.
Yeah.
But yet the Jehovah's Witnesses have to say, "Oh no, we're only out to try and pull people out of the religion." No, maybe some are, but I haven't, and I never have. I haven't been guilty of that, and because I believe in human rights, and one of those human rights is that you have a right to believe whatever you want, no matter how ridiculous it might be. You know.
Yeah, what you said about people, human rights activists protecting Jehovah Witness Shunning, that's true. I agree 100% that Jehovah Witnesses should have the right to kick people out of the congregation if that's what they want to do. No problem. But the thing is, it's like McDonald's also supposed to be able to fire someone. Or I could kick you out from this studio if you start cursing, you know, that, you know. But everything has to be relevant. Let's say that if I have a church called Goat Likes Church, and you don't live up to our standards and we kick you out, that it would be relevant to say that you're not allowed to go back to church. And what is relevant is kind of legal. That's what the court look for. So it would be relevant for Jehovah Witness to say that you misbehave in such a way that you're no longer welcome at the Kingdom Hall. That would be relevant. But Jehovah Witnesses do the opposite. You are welcome at the Kingdom Hall, but you cannot visit your parents. That is not relevant. And that's why it's illegal. It would be like McDonald would say that if they would build up this structure that if you don't do what we tell you, and we can tell you whatever we want because this is God's religion. So if you don't do what we tell you, you lose your parents, but you're still allowed to come back to McDonald's and work every day. You will not just get paid the last 6 months. It's not relevant, you know. Witnesses are, I will have no problem with them telling me that I'm not welcome to the Kingdom Hall. That's their right. But telling my parents that they will be punished if they talk to me, that is not relevant to the case in any way.
Yeah, but you can see that, you know, they've hidden this for years. They had successfully hidden the fact that they have you know that they are telling the members to shun. They have always sold it as being that the members do this willingly and without compulsion, but it's only in recent years that and through a lot of activism in the XJW community, I believe, that the Jehovah's Witnesses no longer can pull out that card, because there's enough evidence, and one of them is being the shepherd of flock of God book, which shows clearly that they do discipline those who talk to those they've disciplined. You know, so they can't call that anymore. And that's make things a little bit difficult for them, because even though they had plausible deniability before, and they would always say, no, we don't shun and we don't rip families apart, and we're able to kind of get away with that for decades. It's only now in the last, I would say, 6 years, since at least 2014, that they can't pull that card anymore. And a lot more of the public are coming to the realization that Jehovah's Witnesses are not that just harmless religion where they come knocking on your doors on a Saturday morning. No, Jehovah's Witnesses are that crazy cult that rip families apart if they don't like you, and that they'll hold as a carrot uh, or against you if you don't comply.
Yeah.
And that's not good for business. That's dreadful for business, because even if they, in it, if things have been so different for Watchtower, and 2013-14 came, and they came on with the website with jw.org, right, and they're coming along with their media. They would have had great growth if they weren't so harmful. I mean, they'd be a much bigger religion, but instead, what you're seeing is that they're losing members. Now, you might put it down to COVID, but I think that's only playing a small part. I think they're losing members anyway, and a lot want to just get out, just because I had enough of this. This has just gone crazy. And I mean, then you see the governing body. I mean, it's crazy nut jobs. I mean, you just look at what they do on screen. It's brilliant. And the same with their helpers, just as nutty. And I think it's fantastic. And it wouldn't have been so nutty, except for the fact that they are so focused on countering anything that we as activists are doing that they just seem more nutty. And I get a good kick out of that.
Yeah. The love always wins, right there. Where is the respect for free will? A person can't live with dignity if they disagree with doctrines. And if you've never been a Jehovah Witness, it's like that. If you disagree with something, not even a big thing, you just say that I don't agree with this, you'll be kicked out, because you have to agree with everything. And one thing that woke me up, I didn't believe in the Bible, but kind of you have this idea that even if the Bible is wrong, it's still the best religion ever and the nicest people ever. And there's a lot of nice people. But when I realized that on Wednesday, when the governing body have meetings, they vote. And you see sometimes the doctrine change back and forth because it's just, the flip vote. Would you say that 50% of the governing body is apostate? The governing body don't agree with, like when I was refusing to do military service, my conscience allowed me to do civil, what do you call it in English? When you're not bearing arm, but you're still doing service?
Yeah, civilian service, is it?
Yeah. So my conscience as a young man allowed me to do that. Also because it's in the Bible. The Bible says that if a person tells you to work, go with him 1 mile, you should go with him 2 miles. So basically the thing in the Bible is that if the government tells me to work for 18 months, it's in Sweden, I should do the double. Just not carrying arms. But I was supposed to rather die than work as a window cleaner at the hospital. And then I couldn't find this. I couldn't understand where they got this strict view, because it's in the Bible that you should go the extra mile. It's from the Bible. If they tell you to go 1 mile, you should go 2 miles. And then when I realized that the governing body, the majority of the governing body at that point agree with me, but they needed 2/3 to change the doctrine. So I live in a democratic country, lived in Sweden, so I didn't have to go to jail or anything. But I would have taken a bullet for them.
Wouldn't we all have to, Jonas? That's the scary thing. I mean, when we were fully in, we would have died for this silly nonsense. You think of the untold millions, or at least hundreds of thousands, that have died because of the blood policy, or even for military service, or in Nazi Germany, or whatever, even Eritrea, countries like that. It's just crazy how much you rely on them, and you would think that what you're doing is for Jehovah or for God, when really it's not. It's for the Watchtower Publishing Corporation. I mean, I think I'll never forget what my mom said to my non-JW sister. She says, Rebecca, do you think Jason would ever talk to me again if the Watchtower said that I could talk to him? She asked that legitimately. I mean, that just tells you that this person, my mother, isn't doing it for God. She's doing it because the Watchtower tells her to do it. And the
Yeah.
Watchtower know that that's how most of their members think. They can write it in the Watchtowers. You just mentioned there about the governing body. They change the doctrine. They go back on it. I mean, as soon as it's changed, they forgot what the old one was. As soon as it's changed back again, they forgot about the one that they just changed back from. It's just crazy. Uh, their minds. It reminds me of, you read in the Bible of the Israelis, or the Israelites, rather, I should call them, the Israelites, ancient Israelites, and they do stuff, and then they suddenly forget something that happened just a couple of months ago. And you're reading the Bible and you're kind of going, how do you even forget that? I mean, how do you forget these things? God killed a whole load of people and they're all forgotten. Now they're back worshiping Baal and stuff. How did they forget this stuff? But then you look at the Jehovah's Witnesses and they're the exact same way. They forget what they believe. I mean, you can have a discussion with a Jehovah's Witness online and they suddenly forgot what they used to believe. I mean, you talk about the generations and how that's changed so many times over the years. And most of them forget what the previous ones were and just rely now on the latest one, which is the overlapping nonsense that David Splain brought out. I mean, he must have been feeling so great. I came up with that great idea. God was in my head, but there wasn't anything in his head. He's got a cone head that comes up like this, and there's a big, huge space of empty air right here. That's what was created this huge gap of the generations.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but Splain is kind of cute because he actually see himself as a scholar and he read all this, and I don't see him as a sociopath. And people say his demeanor, like he's patronizing, talking to people like children. I actually think he's talking to the children. A lot of Bethelites never had children of their own, and they absolutely love meeting families, talking to the children, and explaining the Bible, and blah blah blah. There's a lot of some Jehovah Witnesses I don't like, especially in the governing body, but I think he's kind of weird. I think he's just a lovable weirdo.
Yeah, I would say the same about Let, though. I think you could use the same argument with Les. Les is kind of talks down to people like he's talking to children, and maybe that's what they're doing. Because if you look at all the latest in the literature and the media, everything now in recent years is geared towards the children. I mean, if you look at the Organized to Do Jehovah's Will book, just in 2019, they revised that completely. They changed it all. If you took that version and just looked at the previous version from the 2019 version and just go to the questions, right? The questions for baptism, they completely changed those questions. They reduced them from about 100. I mean, there used to be well over 100 questions, but at least just prior to 2019, there was about 100 questions. They've been reduced down to about 60 questions now, and the questions have been extremely simplified. So they're geared towards children, so a child can understand it. And that's what the organization is doing now. It's basically just trying to keep the children, because it's becoming a very old religion in terms of age group. It's a massive top end, and child wise it's not doing too well, and we'll say middle age, we'll say in the 20s 30s, not many. So they're kind of top heavy on age, so they have to gear towards the children so that they're completely and utterly convinced of this nonsense, so that when they're older they become the elders, they become the members, they prop up the numbers, because really they're not really making it in conversions. Because most people these days, they can go on the internet, do a quick search of Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, you do search for Jehovah's Witness and you get everything with jw.org. I mean, the only way you get jw.org is if you put in something in a search that's related to something they have written in an article or something. But yeah, they're struggling, I think.
Yeah. So if you think about the power structure, this disfellowshipping thing it's an enormous. So they use it in most cases just for rubbish, like people smoke one cigarette or like that. But it keeps the infrastructure and the power of disfellowshipping alive. So they have it for later. I don't think the governing body care if you buy a lottery ticket or not. It's actually in the Shepherd of Flock book, I think, that if you buy a lottery ticket, just make no deal about it.
Yeah,
But
but
Jehovah Witnesses don't know about that. But
yeah,
the point I'm coming
exactly.
to, as long as they can just keep this whip, of disfellowshipping, have that infrastructure, they have a lot of power. And this is how I normally explain this to people, that imagine if you were in an organization and you joined the organization because you wanted to, everything seemed nice, but then you find out that it wasn't exactly like you, and you want to leave. But they have this infrastructure that if you leave, they will take your family from you. And you come up in this situation where they tell you to commit a crime. It's a crime that you might go to jail for 2 years. So you end up in this situation where you could commit a crime and you will go to jail for 2 years. If you refuse to commit a crime, you will lose your family for decades. And ask people, what would you do? And they say, I would commit a crime. People would commit, when I explain it this way, they say, I would commit a crime because I can't lose my family for decades. That means that an organization like Jehovah Witnesses, they have more power than the government of Norway.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if the
because
government
2 years in jail is better than losing your family. So it gives organization like Jehovah Witnesses a power of view that's undemocratic. And so I'm glad that they actually took this to court in Norway now. So it been on 3 levels. It was, if you haven't heard about this story, it was a sister that was technically raped by a Jehovah Witness, a male. So he went to her hotel room and he had sex while she was sleeping, and that is rape in Norway. Having sex with someone that's sleeping is rape.
Same in Ireland,
Yeah.
In a lot of countries, I believe.
Yeah, it should be that way. But this is not about him. But she went to the elders, and like a good Jehovah Witness woman, she thinks like, I have to talk to the elders. They will talk to God, and everything will be okay. Basically, because she wanted someone to talk to, I think, because she's smart. So she knew she didn't do anything wrong. And they start asking all these questions. And in the end, she was disfellowshipped. And she took this to court. And in the first level, she won 100,000 Norwegian kroner, and that she should be reinstated. So it's not about the money. 100,000 is not much in
10,000 euros.
Yeah,
so $10,000. Yeah.
Yeah, so it shows the Scandinavian culture. You don't really go to court to like millions, like people have.
I think it's the right way. It should. I think that's the way it should be. That to me is it's because I find that in court systems like in Ireland and in the US, it's all just a money racket. You can make an awful lot of money in court.
Yeah, but anyway, so she took this to court, and then in the appeal court she lost, and now she won again. So that's the 3rd time she's in court. But now it's the Supreme Court above that. But so technically, the government, they said that she was disfellowshipped on the wrong grounds. So they treated this as a contract. There's an implied contract between these people, and Jehovah Witnesses say over and over again that you have to commit a sin. You have to commit a serious sin, to be disfellowshipped. And she was disfellowshipped even though the elders admitted that they knew it was a rape. They just come up with this idea that, well, you should not have been in this situation, or you didn't fight back enough, or you put yourself in a situation where you must have known that you might be raped, stuff like that.
Yeah, so this is one area that really I find extremely cruel. Rihanna, just what the fuck you say. But if you look at what the sorry, excuse my language. I'm Irish. That's what we do. We swear a lot. That's my excuse. But no, but when you look at the if you look at a lot of
I think it stands for Watchtower Fun.
Oh, right, Watchtower Fun. Sorry, but if you look at there's 3 cases I know of, right? That's similar, or that includes Gree's case in Norway, Ruth Morham's case in Ireland, and Janice Paul's case in the United States. They're all very similar, and they all involve women. and they all show the Watchtower's complete, utter abuse of women, particularly in the judicial process, and the whole court cases show the fight that Jehovah's Witnesses will do against their own members, because you got to remember these are all their own members. Anyone that was baptized as Jehovah's Witness has been identified as a Jehovah's Witness. So they're saying we're going into court and we can kick people out if we want. We can kick them out for whatever reason we want, whenever, however, it doesn't matter, and you should feck off. That's really what they're doing when they're going into court. That's what they did with Gree. That's what they did with Ruth Moore. That's what they did with Janice Paul, right? And this is the thing that I find the greatest irony is why is it that 65% of the membership are women when it's the women who are most abused and most hurt by this judicial process? You look at, I mean, anyone normal looking at the Greek case, I mean, you just look at all the comments in Norway on the news sites, on their Facebook page or whatever, of all the just normal human beings looking at this and going, WTF, you know, it's, what are you doing? You're just crazy nut jobs, completely crazy. And it is, it's wrong. I mean, one thing you should note as well is that, and it's the same in Gree's case, and it's not going to be brought out in court, but it was brought out in court in Ireland with Ruth Moram's case, is that the Jehovah's Witnesses disfellowship, when they disfellowship someone, rightly or wrongly, they can never correct it. They have nothing in place to correct a wrong. So if you are disfellowshipped wrongly, and there have been many of those, Ruth Moram being one, Gree being another, they have nothing in place to say, sorry, we made a mistake. And the reason being is because, well, to say that you have a mistake means that you had no Holy Spirit directing this at all. It was just a bunch of crazy nut jobs. And
one of the
point
where, like, I realized the religion was wrong, but you think it's like a good religion. But I remember one of these times when you actually realized this is not good, this is a cult. It was when I realized that Watchtower never apologized to anyone, because it's quite often they will say that Jason has been reproved. So they just say that you did something wrong, but let's not go into details. And when I was a witness, I thought that was a classy thing. You know, we just say he did something wrong, but let's not go into details. But then I just realized it has never been ever a situation where they go on and say, the elders want to apologize to Jason. Never, ever, ever.
Not the history of Watchtower. Would they ever?
And that's when I realized there's something wrong here, because it would be a classy thing to do. Like, I know I spent some time in the East, and I know when they had this idea that the superior authority was only God and Jesus and stuff like that. When you read it in context, it's obvious that, okay, I don't believe in the Bible anymore, but when Paul wrote this, he was talking about the government. It's obvious. And some people were disfellowshipped because they couldn't not believe what the Bible actually said. And then Watchtower changed it. And I just realized these people were disfellowshipped for apostasy. And Watchtower then changed the doctrine so they are no longer apostates, but they had to repent to come back. All these people should be automatically reinstated, or at least asked. Yeah. So if you're a Jehovah Witness watching this, we can disagree about a lot of stuff, but the fact that Watchtower never apologized to anyone, that should be kind of a wake-up call that something's wrong with this process, because the Norwegian government, every now and then, they go back in time and see, we did something wrong to this guy. He's been in jail for 20 years now, and we give him an apology and $1 million kroner or something, but, you know, we did a mistake. They do it all the time. But Watchtower never done that.
The Jehovah's Witnesses say that the reason why we can rely on the Holy Bible as being God's word is that it admits to when they have wronged, when God's people have done things wrong. And I'm thinking, well, then if you're legitimately God's organization and you do something wrong, admit it. freely admit it, when they've got things wrong on doctrine. In fact, how they word it is, some have said, and that's true, some have said, but we never know who those some were, because all the writers of these articles and who wrote the doctrine in the first place are all anonymous. So who are the some? But what you're trying to do is, because it's anonymous and you're saying some have done this, you're trying to say that it wasn't us, it was someone else. But it's a clear sign that this organization just does not care about whether it's doing right or wrong, or if it's abusing people. And if there's a God and if there's a hell, I'm 100% sure that these men are going there fully. I mean, they might think that they're going to be riding around in lovely golden chariots and coming down to earth and killing the whole human race to clear the way for paradise. But I think they're in for a wake-up call if there is a God and there is a hell, because there's a nice, lovely, burning, roasting fire there for those people that are doing harm to normal, ordinary, God-fearing people that most of us were at one point before we lost our faith because of what this religion has done to us.
Yeah. It's kind of sad. I used to say it more often, but we can't remove the cult, but we can improve the cult, because they actually changed a little when they get lawsuits, they lose, and they see we can't go all bananas. So when they lost this in Norway now, because of this woman that was raped, the elders knew. And the funny thing, they actually showed from the court case on Norwegian TV. So I get to see people I know there. And a friend of mine I was in pioneer school together, he's asking, the judge is asking him questions, and so they admit that the elders, they knew it was rape, but they said, well, the typical witness thing. But he was going to ask a question, and he said like this for 30 seconds, like, and then he said, well, we thought that she enjoyed it. Like with.
But see, this is what's extremely harmful, is that we thought. I mean, if you're in the Watchtower magazines, when it talks about the judicial process, and all you have to do is go on to jw.org and do a search for judicial, just the word judicial, and you'll get the Watchtower study articles on the subject, and they will say that these elders. How to put it in is that the governing body are directed by Jesus and Jehovah, and they have appointed the elders, and the elders therefore are being directed by Holy Spirit, or were appointed by Holy Spirit to be able to do the judicial process. So they have a very important job to do in the judicial process, and so you can be sure that it's going to be very carefully thought out. Now, it cannot be very carefully thought out if you just kind of thought that someone did something wrong, or that they liked it or wanted to do this. I mean, that's not enough. You're kicking someone out for a year. I mean, we have court systems that put people into prison for 6 months for a lot worse. Yeah, you're kicking someone out for at least a year that's going to be completely shown by everyone because you thought. I mean, that's just absolutely cruel on all levels, and just ridiculous that you would do that to someone. I mean, what kind of love do you have? That's a sadistic kind of love. I mean, I keep coming back to this sadistic, but it is sadistic.
It's really not a loving organization. That's kind of a sad day when you realize it's not a loving organization. It's very rule-based. And I guess what these elders didn't like was the fact that she went to a man's hotel room. And, well, it's really none of their business. But I think it was like the situation they don't like.
You're right, Jonas. It is. It's and Rianne just brings up their thought crime. It is a thought. It's a thought crime, but it is. We've told people time and time again that you're not supposed to be alone with the opposite sex, so therefore you're guilty.
Yeah.
Even though you weren't involved, even though you got raped, you're guilty because we told you you're not supposed to be with the opposite sex. Well, the whole thing about not being with the opposite sex isn't because you think you're going to be raped. It's that the two of you will get all amorous together. There's no talk about it being being about it that a one-way sexual experience, and I think elders are just too naive, stupid, or just lack the cop on and are too secluded from normal world that they can't seem to comprehend the seriousness of what they're doing in a judicial committee meeting.
So if there's Jehovah Witness watching this, or someone can leave in the comment section, is it fair for Jehovah Witnesses, even if it would be God's one true religion, that the elders' book is not available for the congregants? Why is it a secret?
Well, we all know that, Jonas, don't we? I mean, when I discovered the Elder Manual in 2014, I was shocked. I got angry. I got extremely angry because I always thought that this whole judicial process is before I went into it, is that it's, everything is, we're a very revealing organization, that we're extremely transparent. We do everything our thing. We've written so much literature. I mean, I was shocked that here's an organization that was bringing out a book every year, at least a book, sometimes two books, releasing 24 magazines every single year. And yet they were still writing more stuff that they weren't showing us.
Yeah.
That's the greatest irony. And why are they creating a manual to hide from the rest of us? Well, clearly they're doing that because they want to be able to control us and judge us without us knowing that they're actually judging us. They wanted to make it always look like the elders are just, it's nearly kind of like, well, if we keep this book and hide certain things, but we feed the elders a certain amount of information, it'll make the rest of the congregants see that, oh, these guys know a lot. And that's the way it has always been. We always kind of wonder, well, the elders seem to know an awful lot. How does he know that? The rest of us don't know that. How does he know that I can do X, Y, and Z? Because you now and again get an elder saying something to you or giving you some advice that you've never really heard in the Watchtower Awake. Yet you're hearing from him, so you're kind of thinking, wow, he knows. No wonder he's an elder. He's an elder because he knows stuff. And I think that's the kind of keeping this all secret helps that mentality and helps us think that the elders are much better than they really are. At the end of the day, I think most of them aren't that very smart.
Heather says something that I actually think she says, my father told me that the elders' book being secret was fair because you wouldn't be able to argue out on technicality like other criminals. So that's the reasoning behind it. I believe that big reasoning behind it, but then on the other hand, the elders' book is stupid. So it's pretty easy to just manipulate your way out of it. But when they have this as an argument, they leave God out of the equation. Because if this really was God's organization and Jehovah and the Holy Spirit and all of that, because witnesses say that when two or three are gathered together, I am among them, and that has the fulfillment of Jehovah Witness Judicial Committee. First thing, that means when Jesus said it, he wasn't talking about the present time. The first 1,950 years, it had nothing to do with reality. It was first when Jehovah Witnesses decided to disfellowship people that it kicked into place. Which is weird, since he say, I am in presence. But if it really was God's organization and God was there, well, why couldn't the rules be open? If someone tried to manipulate their way out of a shunning thing, the Holy Spirit would find out.
Yeah, but I think, the Jehovah's Witnesses go into court, and I take Heather's points. It's a very good one. And it is one of the reasons, clearly. But, when the Jehovah's Witnesses go into court and want to defend anything that they do, they always talk about due process. And they talk about due process that they want. Basically, they have a right to be able to know their rights and be able to defend them, and know the facts of the case to be able to defend themselves. And every one of us can go into court. We can be done for criminal or civil reasons, and we can read the law and see what the law says and where we break it and where it's come. That's called due process, We know our law, we know our rights, and we have someone to defend us. Whereas within the Jehovah's Witness process, there is no due process. There's an elder manual that shows all the laws, because all those rules, and they list them all out in chapter 12. They list out all the rules, and they say it's not exhaustive, meaning that there's more. So the elders can interpret rules, right? But none of those rules are laid out in any public publication. Well, and they should be. Now, they are listed. I mean, you'll find them by going through a whole lot of different watchtowers as that, what's wrong. But they don't say how serious each one is and how they're graded and how the elders treat them. That's only in the elder manual, right? And so therefore, you don't know how serious what you're doing is too much, and you have no way of defending yourself. Second point is that if you go into a courtroom, you can have a lawyer. So you can have someone represent you, or you can represent yourself. When you go into a judicial process, you might as well say that those 3 elders are 3 judges. So that's nearly like going to the High Court, or in your case, there was three judges for Gree's appeal case. So imagine it like that. That's the same for every time you go into a judicial committee. There's at least 3 judges in front of you, and you're not allowed to have any representation. No one is allowed in there at all. Now, witnesses can be invited in. And those witnesses aren't witnesses to defend you. Those witnesses are to accuse you. So you don't have any due process. You're there because you're already guilty, and they're trying to decide whether they're going to kick you out, and you're going to be shunned for the rest of your life if you don't really submit to their authority, because that's literally what it is. And I think it's that cruel process, and that we can, as activists and as normal JWs, the more that we can expose this and show the public this, the more damaging it is for the organization, because the organization wants to come across as being a benign organization, does no harm to anyone. And that they're very loving and they're harmless, and all they do is distribute literature and are Christian and want to show love. But when the reality is that although they show a love on one level, on many other levels they don't. They have a real cruel streak to them, and I think that's more and more coming out over time.
Yeah. So if you think about the judicial process, if they would have a due process. At one point, they sat down and took a choice. They could say, should we have a really uncomplicated process that's based on love? So if there's any doubt, you get to stay. It's just when there's a solid amount of evidence and no doubt about it, like in extreme cases, then we kick you out. Otherwise, we don't. But they decided to have if there's any doubt, we might kick you out. And then the second thing was, should we have real professional elders, like from a Watchtower perspective, that they get a 6-month education and then they travel around and focus on doing this and like have being kind of semi-professional judges? And they said, no, we keep it with the local people. So it is by choice. It's not like it would be no problem for Watchtower to educate people and have like still not real judges, but like Watchtower judges, but with a solid education to deal with these things. That you go to the Jehovah Witness law school and learn this. And also that there was a legal representation. 4 brothers would go, or 3 brothers, and one would represent a person, and one, that you have some kind of due process. But they made a choice that let's keep the local elders doing this. And I guess the reason might be, well, it's cheap, but also I think some elders like it to be in a position of power.
Of course they do.
So it is like throwing a bone to the elders, We don't pay you, but at least you get power and authority.
So this brings me to another point, Jonas, is the point about being victims of Jehovah's Witnesses. I've created a website called Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, I know a lot of ex-JWs don't want to be called victims. And some of them call themselves survivors. But I'd like to just clarify the difference between a survivor and a victim, if I may. And yep. People can disagree with me on this. But a victim is someone that is being abused. in some form or another. So if you're a child abuse victim, you are a victim right now, and that you're being abused by some person. If you're a survivor, a child abuse survivor, basically you were abused, but you're no longer abused, and you're surviving it. I mean, you came out the other end, and you're surviving in one form or another, because it can always have an impact on the rest of your life. So you are a survivor. But others ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are disfellowshipped or disassociated or being shunned in some way and are currently being shunned, we are not survivors because, we can be considered survivors, but we're not really survivors because we're still being shunned. Now, if we got reinstated as Jehovah's Witnesses and we're no longer shunned, then we are survivors, clearly and utterly survivors. But when we are being shunned right now, we are victims. We are all victims of the shunning process. If some Jehovah's Witness somewhere is shunning you and you know that they're shunning you, you're a victim. And you'll always be a victim of it. Now, if you feel like you've moved on and that you don't care if people are shunning, and that there are those people and it doesn't bother you at all, well, then you're not a victim. You can consider yourself a survivor. But I think most of us are victims of it in some way. I think a lot of us are angry over it. I guess some of us are out so long and have moved on and found a good life in some form or another, and it doesn't get to them so much, and maybe they're okay. So, I created the website vjw.org, v-jw.org, called Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses. And the whole point of it was to be able to provide a source where we can get some help and support, because every day you can be sure.
What did you call it?
v-jw.org.
Can you repeat it?
V as in victory, hyphen dash jw.org.
Oh, I can't read that. Hyphen, what's that?
Well, that's the dash, it kind of minus.
Okay.
V minus JW.
.org.
Actually, that's a good way of putting it. V minus JW. Because we are minus.
Okay, I never heard the word hyphen before.
Oh, right. Okay. New word for you. So anyway, it was set up because, we are all victims. And I know when I came out, I had nothing. I mean, when you go across the internet, there's so many of us, but it can be very difficult to be able to find the support. And what I'd like to be able to do is, there's within the XJW community, there's an awful lot of professionals that provide therapy in some form or another. And if we can get those, and then there's also lawyers that can be able to help people in maybe their own countries that need legal representation. We can get those, and that we can get anyone that has some professional service to be able to offer, and that we can be able to provide things for people so that they want to be able to find one place so that they can get all that information and be able to access means to be able to recover from the shunning or from any other type of abuse that they feel that they have to succumb from being a Jehovah's Witness, or from leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, or for sinning within Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever it is. That they can find that support, and that they within their country. And if we have people as well that are willing to give off the time, that can be able to provide support and be able to show them means of getting direction of where they can go. And because I mean there's so many activists. I mean there's the likes of you, Jonas, there's the likes of Lloyd Evans, there's the likes of Mark O'Donnell's, and a lot of other ex-JWs that are doing an awful lot of good work on YouTube, and it's a great way for people to wake up and be able to figure out things, But it's not so easy to be able to find out, well, how can I get support? I mean, because we talk about an awful lot of therapists. I mean, if you go to I talk about my country. If I go to a therapist in Ireland, they don't know anything about Jehovah's Witness. I've gone to one, and she says she knows of Jehovah's Witnesses and she knows of their shunning. She says, but she doesn't really know enough about them to be able. So I was teaching her about them, and now she has a better knowledge of Jehovah's Witnesses and how they work, and she feels that she's been somewhat empowered to be able to deal with Jehovah's Witnesses, at least to a small extent. But there's ex-JWs there that have, because of what they've gone through, have become therapists themselves. And I think I'm thinking particularly of Becky Corbett. She's one of those persons who's gone through an awful lot and has come out the other side, and now is qualified to help people. And I think if we can get those type of people to be able to come to Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses, the website, and be able to provide their details and say, look, I'm willing to help out. I'm willing to give up my services. Now, I'm not saying that when you give your services that it's all free. No, I mean, you are a professional service, but it's what it is to do is to be able so that people can go and know that they can get a service from someone who understands. This is, we think of the likes of Salkin as well when it comes to law firms. We need people, lawyers like that in other countries that know how to deal with Jehovah's Witnesses and what they're going through, particularly in the cases of child abuse and in the cases of what Gree has gone through recently, that they can get their rights defended as well, and by any type of professional that has some knowledge of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. So do you want to show your page and you can comment? So
So before we do that, so can we just go to one thing first of all? Can you go to see the drop down beside blog? Is it no? Hang on. No. Scroll down. Sorry, scroll down on the page. Sorry, it's a new website, so I do forget things.
Home.
No, go back to home, yeah, and just scroll down. See there, tell your story. Yeah,
tell your story. Read more.
Yes. So what I've done there is I've created a survey, right? And the whole point of the survey is to be able to it's written and it's developed in such a way. What I'd like you to do here is actually start to fill it in. I want to show you how it works. So put in any email address, whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And we'll work down through it. But what it is when you complete the survey, it actually writes a story, and it writes your story. So you start filling it in and write, and then what you do is you submit it, and we have this story, and you can write as much as you want or as little as you want. It's all entirely up to you. In fact, you don't have to fill it in at all. But the whole intent of being able to tell your story is to be able to show that there are real victims within Jehovah's Witnesses. And the point of this is because if you think the Watchtower have recently taken a case against an organization in Spain that is called Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses in Spanish, and they want to have them eliminated because they're saying they're infringing on their human rights as a religion to exist. I don't think they're going to win that case. I think it's absolutely a ridiculous case, but they are taking it, and it just shows the level that this organization will go because they do not believe that there's any victims of Jehovah's Witnesses. And when I read that and I saw the court documents and I'm reading through them, I'm going, these guys are just crazy. They're actually extremist in nature, in that they would try and stop an organization that calls themselves Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses. Why would you do that? Leave them be. Well, what they've done now is they've brought attention to them by taking them to court. Now, whether that court case will win, the lawyer defending them is full sure that they're not going to win this, and in fact, they're counter-suing them for damages because they're actually, trying to harm them and trying to eliminate them. So I thought, well, why don't we create a website? So I've set up vjw.org. That's kind of the same idea, Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses, and where we can get people to tell their story in their own country, and it'll show and it'll prove that there are most definitely victims of Jehovah's Witnesses. We're all victims. I see myself as a victim of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm sure many of our viewers here see themselves as victims. And when you're telling your story and you show what you've gone through and what harms the organization has done to you, there is nothing the Jehovah's Witnesses can do. They can try and bring you to court. I mean, I don't mind if they try and bring me to court. I mean, they've threatened me already, so I'm not anyway worried about them threatening me again or even actually bring me to court. It makes no difference. I believe
they were threatening me too to take me to court. If they do it or not, I don't know. But basically, they intimidation and stuff like that.
Okay.
So you have to be brave to be an apostate.
You really do. But you know, I think what that it's the Streisand effect. So you brought attention to the fact that you're bringing you're trying to eliminate. That's the words they use in the court documents. Eliminate an organization called Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I says, well, I'll create one. So now you have to take them down first. Then you have to come after me. But the only difference with VJW is what I intend to do is, if I can get enough guys and enough brave ex-JWs, is have the charity set up in all the respective countries, because then what they have to do is then they might be able to say if they the unlikely event that they were able to shut me down, well, they won't be able to, they won't, that doesn't automatically mean that the organization in another country is shut down, because it isn't. They then have to go to that country and take another court case against them, and so on and so on and so on. So and the fact is, it gets very hard, because if you have them all set up in so many countries and you lose, which is most likely what would happen, you have brought great attention to it. And then Jehovah's Witnesses are wondering is, why do some people consider themselves victims of Jehovah's Witnesses? Because they can't see that there could ever be reason for them to be victims. I mean, you go. I've had Jehovah's Witnesses call to my door, and I've said, you've ripped families apart. No, we don't rip families apart. In fact, when I left the Catholic Church and I joined the Jehovah's Witnesses, my family stopped talking to me for a while, but eventually they talked to me again. So we were all fine again. I said, I'm not talking about what your family who are not JWs doing. I'm talking about what you do when someone leaves the Jehovah's Witnesses. You completely and utterly cut them off and shun them. And it never occurred to the woman. I mean, she was an elderly woman, but it never occurred to her that the shunning is what's what rips apart families. They think that it's all about the families, how they react when they become Jehovah's Witnesses. So I think Jehovah's Witnesses in general are extremely naive as to exactly what's going on with the whole shunning thing. I mean, I met an ex-JW today who's just recently woke up, and he was telling me about people, how the elders have been viewing me. They're calling me crazy. And I can see why they think I'm crazy, because you have to be crazy to criticize Jehovah's Witnesses. And there's a real kind of naive mindset within the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they're taught that, well, anyone that's criticized Jehovah's is mentally deceased, aka crazy. So it's and it's the Watchtower that promulgates this idea, and so then it's very important for them to shut down anything that gives an idea of what's really going on. And having websites like called Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses the whole term victim is something that Jehovah's Witnesses would never see, that they victimize anyone. So it's extremely detrimental to them. And I think it was really good that the Jehovah's Witnesses have taken this case, because otherwise we'd never have known what really, really bugs them. Now we do.
Yeah, I noticed some, because I'm the government here is making a probe. I complain about Jehovah, how they keep GDPR information about me, and according to the Elders book, it says that when an apostate a disfellowship person move from one place to another, they should not send the confidential archive. So they say there is a confidential archive, but they should give the new elders on my address, my address, and some information they think it's important. So it's well documented that there is a confidential archive. And then Jehovah Witnesses, they have this way of lying. It's called theocratical warfare. Basically, that they always answer a different question than you really asked. So when the government on my behalf asked Watchtower, do you have a confidential archive? And remember, this is documented. Watchtower answered, no, we do not have a secret archive. They just change a word and pretend that, oh, this is a totally different question. So, and then they go on to talk about the secret archive. But if someone wants to see the secret archive, it's available to everyone,
and
even though it doesn't exist.
See, and just going back, and this is the Jonas. This is what makes you kind of very dangerous to the Watchtower organization. They'll threaten you with legal action, but they will be very reluctant to go into a court with you. The reason being is that you know how to read the documents. You know how to read through the theocratic warfare. It's the same with the likes of Lloyd Evans. You know, they tried to get him on, but they tried to get him off the case. You know, off the case in the ICSA hearing, based on being able to do it behind the scenes, you know, and say things about him, not thinking that they'd ever get to see it, you know. But they would not like to face him in a courtroom because he can read through the theocratic warfare. The same with me. You read something that they say, you can just read through it straight away. You know how they're using the dogged technical terms, you know, as you said, the secret database as opposed to the database. It's like completely two different things. And it's the same way you think of the blood transfusions. They say they use the term Jehovah's Witnesses and Jehovah's Witnesses. So you have to be very careful with Jehovah's Witnesses. They say Jehovah's Witnesses believe that that we have our choices to make regarding taking a blood transfusion. We choose as Jehovah's Witnesses not to accept a blood transfusion. Now, what they're saying there is that the Jehovah's Witnesses as an organization have chose not to, but to present it as if it's the individual members, because they don't make that distinction, and they purposely don't make the distinction between Jehovah's Witnesses, the religion, and Jehovah's Witnesses, the individuals. But it's like saying, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses, the individuals, have the choice to accept, to not to accept, have made the choice not to accept blood. But that's not true, because it's not a choice. That would be like saying, right, so in Ireland, we drive on the left-hand side of the road. And that's like saying, if we took away all the rules of the road and we said, you know, we as Irish choose to drive down the left-hand side of the road. And we choose this because to drive on both sides of the road would be very dangerous. But the fact is, it's not really a choice. If you drove down the right-hand side of the road and you got fined or you were sent to prison, because it's not a choice then, because you were getting disciplined first. So it's the same with the Jehovah's Witnesses. To say that they choose not to accept blood is not technically true, because if you accept blood and you get disciplined for it, it's no longer a choice. It's a law. And that is it within the Jehovah's Witnesses. But it's the way they carefully word things. And I think the likes of certain activists within the community are very dangerous to Watchtower, because they know we can read right through the documentation and how they word things. And it's detrimental to them, because the theocratic warfare, or also what I prefer to call it, is the Rahab principle, because they like to talk about their principles, you know, the Bible principles and the Bible standards. But it's the Rahab principle. And I mean, you just do a search, jw.org, Rahab principle, into your browser, and you'll get straight to the most important article about their how they use Rahab, and in her case, they use Rahab and they link it with Jesus Christ not revealing too much, and so the two go hand in hand between Rahab and Jesus. We don't have to tell the truth to those who do not deserve it. But what they don't say is, they don't make it very clear as to who does and who does not deserve the truth. Which means that even us, if we go back to the judicial process and we go into a judicial meeting, we too, as Jehovah's Witnesses, do not have to reveal the truth to those who do not deserve it. And Jehovah's Witnesses who are on a witch hunt do not deserve it. So you can hold back information as well using Bible principles.
Yeah, I remember when I was a pioneer and I realized something was wrong with the organization, but I thought the religion was true. So I just pick up a yearbook, find out where is the biggest need, like in Mongolia. So I decided to move to Mongolia and preach, not go to Gilead, just pay my own way and preach there. Well, it was 80 publishers in the country at that time. And so I knew where the Bethel was, it was Russia was in charge of it, and then they moved it to Japan. But you should go through the organization. So I called down to Bethel, and remember, I know all of these people on Bethel there, and I asked him what Bethel is in charge of the work in Mongolia. And this guy that I know personally said, that's classified information. Straight to my face. Because this idea of not giving true information basically means that anyone on Bethel can lie to the elders. And then I wasn't an elder, but I was a pioneer. And I told my friend that's a missionary in a Russian congregation, and he said he couldn't understand that because it was in the Kingdom Ministry, in the Russian edition of Kingdom Ministry, that the Russian branch have no longer a responsibility for Mongolia. This is moved to Japan. So it's not classified in any way. It's just, I don't know why they didn't want me to have it.
Very strange, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's sad. Bethelites, many of them are nice, but the service department, they look down on witnesses, and elders are allowed to lie to congregants when it comes to elders matter. But the elders don't realize the circuit overseer are allowed to lie to them, and so on. So
yeah, but that goes to the whole cartoon. The whole cartoon we have where you have the birds up on a stick, and it's like they're pooing on the ones below, who poo on the ones below, who poo on the ones below. So it's basically the same in Jehovah's Witnesses. You have the top, the governing body, who can lie to the helpers of the governing body, who can lie to the branch committee, who can lie to the Bethelites, who can lie to, or we'll say the service department, who can lie to the CEOs, who can lie to the elders, who can lie to the ministerial servants and the congregants. It's just crazy that there is a hierarchy in the a need to know basis, and if you don't need to know, we'll word it in such a way that you do not ask further.
Yeah, so like now they sent a letter, and that's a kind of shift. They used to say that we don't baptize infants, and then they hold back the information that they baptize minors. So they say technically it's not a lie, we're just misinforming. But in the last letter that Watchtower wrote to the government, they actually said we don't baptize children, which is to say that we don't baptize infants is lying according to Watchtower's definition of lie, because if I say something that's technically true, but I know you will misunderstand it, it is lying. Yeah. And so that's what they're doing. They say something that they know will be misunderstood. But now they actually went and said, we don't baptize children in an official letter to the government.
But they've been caught out now quite a few times in lying to the government. And I don't know, I mean, I've talked to Jan on this, and I don't get why the government just doesn't do something. I mean, lying to the government is the same as lying in court under oath, as far as I can see. I mean, if you're going to be going to that level, I mean, if you're going to do something, if you're going to tell your congregants that they have to do X, Y, and Z, and that you do things, own it. I've said this many times before in other interviews. It's like, if you're going to say something, if you're going to do something, if you're going to be a religion in a particular way, and this is how you act, and this is the rules you use, own your rules, accept them, admit to them. This is what we do, and use your hold that where our religious rights are defended. We're defended, about being able to has been able to defend their rights, and use that as their argument for why they do these harmful practices. What are people talking about? Something about Lloyd or something? Is it because I'm in?
Yeah, some people. Okay, so one of the most common question you get if you're a YouTuber is like, what do you think about Lloyd? And people say a lot of nasty stuff, and I try to stay away from drama, but every now and then I say something nice about people. I can tell you Lloyd's working full time making videos, and he has a family to provide for. So if someone's appreciate his work and give him $1 or $2, good for them. It's all voluntarily.
Well, there's one thing I hate about the XJW community is that is like there is no need for us to give out about any other activists. If you have nothing good to say nothing. If you have something good to say it. And I believe all of us as activists can see the good that all activists are doing, and it's not an easy job being an activist. And yes, some of us do get paid for it, and that's all right. And if I wanted to go and do it, and I needed to get paid if it was my job, I have that right to do it. But it's a bit disappointing that XJWs can just start bickering on about other bit about X, Y, and Z, right? Right now and again, one or two of us might have a disagreement over something, then it's over, and that's it, it's over. But then you have the fight and the this and the that and they're all the other. So look, if you can't say anything nice, say nothing.
Yeah.
That's it. Say nothing. And if you can say something nice, say it. And that's it. Nothing more to say about. So maybe that's just a troll in the thing. But I did notice, and I just want to say a hello out to Henrietta Riley, a good friend of mine. Hello, nice to see you. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, no, like just talk about myself now. I spend more than 50% of my working time on this channel. Yeah. And I do have patrons and I do get events, but it's not paid labor. And on the other hand, you might get lawsuits with Watchtower.
Yeah.
So if John Cedar's able to make a living, good for him.
So moving on. So yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any person on the any person on that's listening and that can provide a service or does provide a service, a professional service or otherwise. If it's a free service, just as good, free and professional services. Victims of Jehovah's Witnesses, myself, and anyone else that's going to be involved in the site are interested in hearing from you, and that we can show your service on the website so that there can be support for people on there. Because really, the XJW community is a fragmented group of people, from all various walks of life. And you know what? It's one of the great things I like about the XJW community is that we're from so many different countries and we can all come together. The internet has been brilliant that way, that we can get all together and we can help each other out and we can find ways to work together to be able to bring change within the organization or even without the organization, inside and outside. And I think that's what we really need. And we need driven people who are interested in that. And I think there's a lot of us in the XJW community who are that way. And so I'm hoping with victims of JW that we can create a formidable organization, the one that can be really strong and help people. And that's really what it's about, helping each other. Because we do have to help, because no one understands. I mean, I was just having a chat with my wife just yesterday, and she says, "You're all weird." She's saying it in a nice way, but we are. We're all kind of weird in a way. But I think, we all came from a cult. So, yeah, we're all going to be a little bit weird. But not in a bad way. And I think that weirdness is, because I think there's an awful lot of us that are extremely creative in the way we operate, and if we can tap into that creativity in us all, and if we can tap into the positive aspects of each other, and work with each other and be able to help each other, I think we can do a lot of good, and we can do a lot of stuff that can be extremely detrimental to the more harmful aspects of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. And if Watchtower are watching this, just be the good guy. Ask yourself, what would Jesus do? And then you will never hear from me and Jason again.
Yeah, it's true though. It's very true.
Easy as that. I have no problem with Watchtower.
But did you see Fader's there? Fader is another good friend of mine, and he just mentioned that he's been on judicial committees, and he just says that he's been on a judicial committee where one of the elders that was judging was committing sin himself. It's just pure hypocrisy. And Fader's been on quite a few judicial committees, over the years, and it's I guess they can be quite eye-opening. I suppose the other side of it is that as me as an outsider and who's never been an elder, I sometimes wonder how more elders don't wake up to the hypocrisy of their system, and do they not kind of question some of the things when they go into a judicial process and come away and start thinking about it and wondering, were we a little bit crazy, or were we a little bit harsh, or were we a little bit pervy, or what if we're wrong? And what if we find out that we were wrong and that we can't actually fix it? Why can't we fix it? I mean, why did I not ask these questions? I mean, these are all types of questions I would be asking if I was an elder and I was going through these things,
Yeah, that was kind of one of my stumbling blocks when I was a witness. I was working really hard, but I never got any positions, and basically because I was living and breathing the truth, but I could see people that did less than me and knew less about the Bible than me. They got to be ministerial servants and elders and stuff like that, and I just started noticing one thing, that kind of intelligence, the more things you can take into consideration, the smarter you are, the more things you can take into consideration. Mm-hmm. And even if you're high functioning, you can still be kind of a little bit above average intelligent. And I noticed that these people would make career in the Watchtower, because when they had a complicated situation, they were like, what do Watchtower say? And that's all they needed to know. While for me, the situation was much more complicated. It was like the Old Testament, the New Testament. And I would always take the Norwegian legislation into consideration too, because we're in Norway, and that's not a problem. If Watchtower say one thing and Norwegian authorities say one thing, it's just common sense, because how could the governing body know about all the details about Norwegian legislation? They don't. So, but people that were like not stupid but like less intelligent would make careers, because they would only focus on one thing to get their mental, I don't know how to describe it without offending some ex-elders there. But obviously I'm not talking about all elders, but I see a lot of people that are well-functioning in society, so they're not stupid, but they don't have the intelligence necessary to see a bigger picture. And then the perfect elder, because they might be well-spoken, well-dressed, and loyal to Watchtower. That's what's most important. So I think this is very personal, but I think that's why many don't wake up, because they just look at what Watchtower say, and that's true, and that's all they need to know.
Yeah.
So the lady now, the sister that was, the court said that it was wrong. Her disfellowshipping was wrong, and basically what the court looked at this as if it is a contract. So Watchtower is a business, and they have a contract with her, and they violated the contract when they disfellowshipped her. So they don't decide if rape should be a disfellowshipping thing or not. They just say it's not in the contract, and therefore it's wrong. And some people say that this probably will be appealed to the Supreme Court. And this professor said that it's not the Supreme Court that should decide who is a Jehovah Witness or not. And that is an incredible stupid thing to say. Because if I work for McDonald's and they fire me in violation of my contract, I can sue them. It can go all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court can rule about that. But that is not the same thing as the Supreme Court decide who is going to work for McDonald's.
No, no, exactly.
Yeah. So what professor could say something that's stupid? It's not the Supreme Court that decide who work for McDonald's. It's not the Supreme Court who decide who's a witness. But if the parties can't agree, it is the court that decide.
But bear in mind, Jonas, that if you want to get someone, an expert, to support your argument, whatever your argument is, you will find that person if you really go look, to say whatever you need. I mean, the Watchtower, where did they find them? They were able to find them. So they found someone that was willing to defend their actions for their own intentions. And I believe that's who that expert is. Just the same as they have all these other experts who are willing to say whatever they want them to say. And some of them they pay, have been commissioned by Watchtower to be able to say what they want them to say. And who knows, maybe they've done the same in this situation and said the most stupid thing. But it's not the Supreme Court. As you point out, it's not the Supreme Court deciding who is or who is not a member. What they're deciding is whether or not how the judicial process was right or wrong. Just the same way as if you were deciding whether or not you can be fired or not. We should be able to say that we should be able to have the right to be able to say that it shouldn't have ever happened. Not that you can harm people, because, and I guess it's going to be a very curious case because it is human rights coming up against human rights, really, because people have a right to family, and Gree has a right to a family. But then you have the argument, well,
and her grandchildren has a right to their grandmother.
Yes, exactly. But that's all taken away from her, and so she has to leave her life in the palms of elders who wrongly disfellowshipped her. So there's where there's a technicality. Well, the wrongly thing, it's very clear that they did wrongly do it because they're taught. So, I mean, it's going to be a hard one. It's going to be a hard one to figure out whether the Supreme Court will go along with it. But even if the Supreme Court let's say, did go along with Gree, they're still going to battle it all the way to European Court of Human Rights, which I hope it does go that far, because it would be interesting to see how the European Court of Human Rights will go, because, they've fought many cases and won and lost cases in the European Court of Human Rights. But I think we're now at a point where, before they were able to cover the eyes of the European Court as to what they actually do. Those days are kind of going, and I think if it goes that far, Norway, at least, the lawyer for Gree will have enough information to be able to present a good case, and at least be able to show up what exactly is going on within the Jehovah's Witness organization and how they are really treating their members, particularly women. Because it's disastrous. I mean, you talk about the verse in James chapter 1, verses 27, and that the true religion is identified that you're taking care of orphans and widows. So you could technically look at Gree as being one of those widows, a spiritual widow. She has no husband, she's a single mother. And so she is technically a widow, and her sons are technically spiritual orphans, and so are the grandchildren. They're orphaned because they don't have their grandmother. So the Watchtower is going the wrong way about this, and they're not really following biblical principles. But what they're trying to do is just use their human rights, which, if you look at it in the worldly context, well, they're relying more on Satan's system than they are looking on the biblical system. And maybe they need to take a stock back and look back and say, really, are we following what God wants, or are we following what the devil wants? What are we doing? And if you look at it, it's a very demonic approach to taking.
Yeah. So some people that commented this and meant that Watchtower is right. They said it's ridiculous that the court should know better, should be able to know Jehovah Witnesses rules better than Jehovah Witnesses. Yet again, that's a stupid argument, because I have a company. If I fire one of my employees, he can take me to court, and then the court might say that they know my rules better than me. That's what they do. So if I can just slap the label religion to any business activity and be above the law.
But that's really it, because if that's a very good point, Jonas, because that's the way I think. Is like, I'm wondering, why aren't all businesses trading as religions? Because they get away with a lot more, and they wouldn't have to pay any taxes. Any corporate tax, gone. In the morning, gone. You become a religion, and you're saying that, people that are staff, they can either join it, they're more than welcome to. They don't have to. We will still employ them. But we were now a religion. So let's say it was called the Church of McDonald's. So therefore, I no longer have to pay taxes, right? And when you look at the Jehovah's Witnesses as a religious group, they were called the Watchtower Corporation, and they're still called the Watchtower Corporation, which was there before the Jehovah's Witnesses were ever there. It was a business, and it's a book business. And it's the same with the Mormons, with the Book of Mormon, and with it's all books. In Scientology, all books. And now they're all moving into media now, into TV. So why doesn't Warner Brothers or Metro Goldwyn Mayer, why don't they all just become religions? Because if they just become religions, they can make the big bucks and not pay any taxes, and be able to abuse their members. That says, "Oh, he's in our religion, and we can deal with people within religion as we so fit." So there has to be a line drawn where religions can do what they like, but cannot harm who they like.
Yeah, I can give an example of this because. Okay, so there's a little different understanding of the word, the connotation of the word from this side of the Atlantic and the American side. Right. So when Americans talk about separation of state and church, they think like, I noticed, like the government should have nothing to do with the religion. The religion should do whatever they want. While in Europe, when you talk about separation of state and church, it's basically that the church should not be a part of the government's infrastructure. Because like in Britain, the church is a part of the infrastructure. Let's not go into that. But the idea that religion can do whatever they want above the law, well, they used to say the same thing about family. They used to say that a husband cannot rape his wife because it's his wife. And the government should not control what happens inside a family. And Sweden was the first country that said what we now think is obvious, that obviously no one can rape their spouse. It's still rape. Sweden was also the first country that said that you cannot hit your children. So, but when that idea were new, people would argue against it and say, oh, socialist Sweden, the government should interfere in how people treat their family members. Yes. If you punch them, yes, or if you rape them. And the same with religion. The government don't care about religion, but you cannot treat your members like they do. If it's a crime, it's a crime. No matter if they believe in something invisible, they still have to follow the law. And Jehovah Witnesses are, I would say, Watchtower are a business. They make profit.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't they not have the same, follow the same law as everyone else in Norway?
But the main religion in Ireland is the Catholic Church, right? Now most Irish aren't really practicing Catholics. They go along with it. They do the Holy Communion, do the confirmations, and it's basically for the kids. So they're not big. But let's say that Jehovah's Witnesses have become the largest religion in Ireland, right? And it was mainly made up of Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, then what you would have is you'd have this small faction, the lesser number of people were the only ones that are going to be voting in elections, first of all, right? Which is going to be a disaster. So those in government are going to be from a minority of people within your country. So let's say we have a population of 4 million. 3 million were Jehovah's Witnesses, and we have 1 million who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. So they're ruling the country. Now, if they're Jehovah's Witnesses are using the shunning and they can get away with the whole shunning practice, right, and continue to use, and they're using it on three quarters of the population, and 3/4 of the population, that you have to bear in mind that some of them will be from divided households, so it'll even affect the million that are not Jehovah's Witnesses. Right. So when they're doing the shunning, what you would have is an extremely dysfunctional society that you have to maintain. That would be very impossible to maintain in a country. And in fact, I think the whole process would be detrimental to any country if Jehovah's Witnesses were the most numerous. And so at what point do you realize that, well, that it's okay for a minority to act like this way, but if it became the majority, how can we continue to act this way? It would topple countries. Countries would become inoperable, because you'd have 3/4 of the population who will not listen at all to what the court to the system. They put more priority in the eight fellas over in New York than they will of their government that they're in the country they're in. So it just got very messy, particularly when it came around to kind of things like child abuse and blood transfusions and those type of things. I mean, you'd have a very, very seriously effed up system.
Yeah.
And
the sad thing is, if Jehovah Witnesses would follow Jesus's example, they would not have these problems. That's the sad thing.
Yeah, you're
the
right.
solution is straight in. I don't believe in the Bible, but I read enough to know that a lot of the problems would disappear if they follow the Bible. Like, if a child is abused, if your brother sins against you, you should talk to him. Then you should go back with 2, and then you should talk to the congregation, not the elders. You should talk to the congregation. Yeah. And then you could have like, okay, sister 5-year-old is accusing brother pedophile of rape, and he can, if he has a clean conscience, he can explain what he was thinking and why he did what he did. But this way, everyone knows that we will not allow brother pedophile to babysit our children. So even if there's not enough evidence to disfellowship him, the problem would be solved in a way that it would not happen again. But when witnesses don't follow the Bible and they go to 3 elders that put a lid on it and file a report with Watchtower, so next time it happened, we can kick him out.
Yeah, but
they don't solve the problem. They wait for a second victim.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a very good point as well. Why
if they follow the Bible, they would not have this problem.
So you'd have let's say the congregation was made up of 100. This child has come forward, tried to deal with the thing. They then now come before the congregation. All the congregations are there. Then someone comes up, another little child comes up. He did it to me too. And suddenly it comes, and then another child comes up. You'd have all these hands maybe raising, and you'd find that actually there's an awful lot, or then you may not have any, because maybe it was the child was making it up. I mean, it's not likely, but we have to assume that there's also that possibilities. So it would, if it came before a congregation, as the Bible says, you'd have less chance of error. I think there's more chance of error when it's just secretly done with 3 elders, and then the rest of the congregation have no idea what went on, and yet they're to just trust the elders that it was all right and that they never make mistakes. Off they go. We won't talk to him for at least until he comes back and realizes he made bad mistakes. What did he do? We don't know, but it must have been bad.
Because there's no one blaming the Jehovah Witnesses. If a Jehovah Witness commit a crime, it's not Watchtower's fault. It's not the elder's fault. It's his fault. But the problem is with this is that it happened again and again and again, and the congregants do not get a warning. If they would follow the Bible's advice, they would not have the problem. So the reason why I am here and Jason is here is basically because the Jehovah Witnesses don't follow the Bible. And that's really sad if you think about it, because there's so many nice people there spending so much energy on something they believe in. And if they actually did what they believe in, they would not have the problem.
Yeah.
Imagine when the Pharisees came to Jesus and said, this woman has committed fornication, should we stone her to death? Jesus did not stone her to death. But the elders disfellowshipped her for being raped while she was asleep. It's like they don't really follow Jesus's example in any way.
Yeah, because if you look at a Watchtower article from 1952 that says, it actually says that, the laws of the land don't allow us to kill them, so we disfellowship them. It's nearly like, oh, damn, if only we had stoning, We could have stoned those bastards. It's nearly like these guys are freaking extremists, because if we were lived in a country where stoning was permissible for your religious organization, under religious freedom, you're allowed to stone people to death. Would Jehovah's Witnesses do it?
Yeah.
I think they nearly would. Yeah, without thinking. And how many would they have wrongly stoned?
Yeah,
and how many women that have been raped would have been stoned? Well, but at least we got rid of her. So she'll never feel sad again. There's some kind of screwed up logic in this. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
Kind of sad. It's awful sad. I think that's the only reason we are here chatting, Jonas, is because
I can tell you a funny story, because this brother that disfellowshipped her, one of three, and he was sitting in court until he said, we thought she might have enjoyed it, the rape. But so I know him, and this is a story. When I went to a meeting once, I found a package of cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Complete package of cigarettes, and I took it because I did not want a child to find it.
Right.
And Jehovah Witnesses don't smoke, in case you didn't know it, some of the viewers. So I put it in my pocket, and when I came to the Kingdom Hall, I threw it in the trash. And then later he came, this elder. He wasn't an elder then, but he said, "Is this you?" I said, "Yeah, I found it. I threw it away." And he said, "Yeah, but maybe we can sell it and make some money." So I had to take it from his hand, and I destroyed it and threw it back. And selling cigarettes would be a disfellowshipping offense. So this elder that was a part of disfellowshipping her, he was gonna sell cigarettes at one point in his life. It was when we were on the pioneer school.
I don't know. They call me crazy.
Yeah, it's a sad story, but I think it's a good thing that the government look into this, because it's not about whether she should be a Jehovah Witness or not. It's not a human right to be one of the Jehovah Witnesses. No. They are allowed to kick me out.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at the whole picture, that they create a government infrastructure where they have more power than the government itself over my life. And they cannot be held accountable because we believe in something invisible.
Yeah, the lovely Sky Fairy that always comes to their aid in court. As you can see, he's always there. He's always protecting them. They've never lost a case. I find it hilarious because in 1991, Philip Rumley, the counsel for the Watchtower organization, gave a talk and was basically boasting about all the cases they won, including the Janice Paul case from the 1980s, and saying that it all went all the way up to the Supreme Court and that they won, and God, he says, Jehovah has never allowed an apostate to win against us. And I was just saying in recent years is that, he's eating his words now. Maybe that was true in 1991 when they were able to keep everything secret, but nothing secret anymore. Nothing sacred. That they can't, they're going into court and now they have to be honest, because if they're not honest, it's just, well, you said this and this is what you said, and you said this and you've written this. Isn't this true? Okay, yeah. So therefore, yeah, you're wrong. He wins the case. Apostate goes out and wins the case. So it's like it's so easy to win a case when you're lying through your teeth and no one knows you're actually lying. But when people do know you're lying, well, you don't really win anymore. So who was helping you? Was it the devil, who's actually the father of the lie, or was it Jehovah, who is the protector of the lie? Because that's really what you're trying to say, is that Jehovah protects you when you lie. So yeah, I think things are changing. Watchtower isn't being the real holy Joe that they like to think they are. And I'm kind of happy and pleased the way things are progressing in recent years. I don't know if, just on another point, because someone mentioned something there. I don't know if any of you been watching the whole Ramapo situation up in upstate New York, where they're building the whole studio. So they have all this land, right, that they bought for $11 million, and they didn't know what to do with it for 10 years, and then decided, you know what, let's go make JW Studios, a great new Hollywood, or the Jollywood or the Jehovah would. And but what they're doing is they've purchased the land and they're building all these properties, right? But then they came about and you know they submitted in their plan request and it got approved. But now they wanted to change it, so they've changed the things and they're reducing the number of staff, but having the same amount of properties. And what they've been asked is well, why have you got the same amount of residential properties if you have reduced your staff? Oh, we're going to rent those out. So they're going to rent out. Sorry, I'm getting things wrong. No, they have bought property. No, they bought kind of land, and on that was properties on it. But they're not going to demolish them. They're going to have keep them there, and they're going to lease them out. So they're going to lease out property to worldly people, and generate revenue that way. And that will help them to offset the cost for their studio. So to me, I mean, if you're going to become a leasing company along with everything else, are you not just a business? And should you not be paying taxes, full utter taxes on everything you do, including your studio, really, I think. Because basically, you are just a multi-billion-dollar media organization now, masquerading as a religion. So it's just kind of nuts, and I wonder how no one will notice this, especially the people in upstate New York who live up there and they can see all this in the news media that they're leasing land and they're leasing it out to worldly people. I mean, imagine building a bunch of Kingdom Halls and you built a condo or two beside them, and you started leasing them out to ordinary Joe Soap. Would that be acceptable? That you can do this now? I could nearly see it going that way. You know,
Yeah.
get the condos with your Kingdom Hall, make money.
When I came to Norway, it was for a building project, and we were building a Kingdom Hall and 7 condos, flats in downtown Oslo. So we were building flats with free labor. So they sold 3 Kingdom Halls, and we built one new. And I remember I said to the elders, that's a good business thing, because when we sell the old one, and then we build a new one, we're making, because I thought, like, that's a good thing. Watchtower is making money. And I remember all the elders said, no, we don't. This is 100% depending on contributions. And all of them said exactly the same. And I knew already then that when all the elders say exactly the same, someone told them what to say. And I didn't really have the critical thinking skills, but if we sell 3 Kingdom Hall and building the new one is 100% depending on donation, that would only make sense if we gave away the 3 old conventions, Kingdom Halls. But probably, I guess, it was something that Watchtower took that money, and then they had donations to build this thing with 7 condos that then Jehovah Witnesses got to live there. And from what they told me, they said it said in the contract that if you were disfellowshipped, you had to move out. But a few years later, they sold it and built something new, you know. But building condos with free labor, it's a good business model, and then not paying taxes. So they've done stuff like that before.
Yeah, it's you know, they like to say that they're transparent, or they want to give an idea, the impression that they're transparent, but they're not transparent about anything, really. I mean, you don't know what they're doing with their money yet. You know, and we criticize this all the time as activists. We criticize their use of money and donations and how they're not very visible about it. But what you've seen in recent months, at least on their website, is now they kind of, on their Watch News section, when they're posting stuff about you know, kind of disasters with whatever, for whatever reason, and or if they build a Kingdom Hall, they just show that they have it as in how your donations are used. But you know what? How your donations are used for like disaster relief or for these other things is if you had a barrel, a 5-gallon barrel of water, right? Just about this much of that barrel is the donations that they tell you about. The remainder, which is about this much, is not being revealed as to how that's being used, you know. And why not show it? If you're God's true organization and really just and kind and transparent, and you have nothing to hide, you should be able to show us all the money and how it's being used. But no. And then there's so many, there's 8 million people giving money to them and have no real clue as to what's going on.
Yeah, I think if you see what cults do is they create like an illusion of being nice, because the people on the bottom, Jehovah Witnesses, are really nice, hardworking, honest people, yes. Most of them, and they pay taxes like to a ridiculous degree, like really, really super conscience.
Yeah.
And then they assume that the higher up you go, the better it gets. Oh, it's like the Mormon religion, like Joseph Smith, he married 14-year-old girls. That means he had sex with them, but they didn't live together. And he got married to other people's wives. He sent them out as missionary, and while they were gone, he was marrying them and stuff like that. But then the rank and file, they are not allowed to masturbate. They're not, they're really focusing on that. So try to explain to a Mormon that believe that masturbation is wrong, that Joseph Smith had sex with 14 years old. It doesn't make sense, because you create this illusion that we are so strict and it just gets better and better the higher you get up. And with Jehovah Witnesses, it's the same. They're like super good with paying taxes on the low level, but it gets... Okay, so I've never seen Watchtower. I'm just talking in general now, because I never seen the actual paper, of course. But my experience from being in an organization is like it gets more and more crap the higher you go up, and like theocratical warfare and stuff like that. And I remember when they paid me my salary, they told me we get like 800 kroner a month, and they asked me if it was enough with 500 due to taxes. And that means I would pay like 40% taxes, pretty high. But anyway, I was okay with that. But then in the end of the year when you should send in your annual thing, so I asked Watchtower for my paper, and they said, no, we never did it correctly, because obviously it was my fault. So we paid you under the table with cash from the other account. And they told me how it worked. That they ask people that makes good donation, that say, instead of giving it into contribution box, can you just give it to us and we use it for undocumented expenses? They had such an account. So every month I had to sign a slip that went into a binder. But in the end of the year, I had not made any money legally. So in that case, which I saw with my own eyes, was a case of double books.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that I paid taxes, because for some reason they deducted 800 down to 500 due to taxes, but it went from the so I don't think, maybe someone was skimming my 300 kroner a month.
Yeah. Well, you were given more donations than I was ever given, and I'm just glad I never gave them much money at all.
Yeah, but this was my salary. I'm talking about my salary when I worked for them. I worked for Watchtower building those condos.
Oh,
and
right.
I asked for, when you're Bethelite, you get like, I think it's like $100 or something now. And then I think it was like 800 kroner, that's like 80 pounds. And they said, due to some tax, blah, 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 you only get 500, like 50 pound. And I was okay with that. And I signed a slip every month that I had received my salary. And it was put in a binder.
Okay.
Yeah, I signed a physical paper that I could see with my own eyes go to a binder. But when I asked them in the end of the year to get, the statement that I showed to my taxes.
Yes.
They said, we never paid you from the legal account. We paid you from the other account. So in that case, I know, because I saw it with my own eyes, that they had separate books for the bookkeeping.
And then they're still getting that's in Sweden.
In Norway.
But that was in Norway as well, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Because in Norway they're getting money as well, getting grant aid. I mean, so they're making money if they're playing the books, and they're also getting money. It's just so much money going in, and yet when that money comes in, then that all that money goes out again, because it's not kept in Norway, because they don't help out the poor. And actually, that just reminds me. I went to the convention in London, where I met you for the first time, Jonas. Remember that convention? I went in there, and do you remember you were all standing in the thing, but I didn't come over first. I went straight into I was dressed up and I didn't put on a tie, but I was dressed up, and I even had my name tag. And I went in and I sat down at the convention to listen into one of the sessions on the Saturday morning. But I got bored after about an hour, and I went and I sat out in the lobby area, and I just kind of observed the Jehovah's Witnesses. And there was an awful lot outside. Seemed to be more outside than there was inside listening. But one I noticed, I remember noticing this woman, and she had 4 or 5 kids. She had quite a few kids, and she's walking along. But I was just looking at how they were all dressed, and I mean, you could tell clearly she had very little money. Her kids were just about covered in clothes. I mean, it looked like very much that they were hand-me-downs from some charity shop she got them in. And I'm just looking and just thinking, that poor woman. She probably gives her last penny to this organization. This organization is billions of dollars, sold so much, and here you have very poor people like this, just scraping by, doing their best, trying to be good holy Joes. And who is here to kind of help those people? And why could a few bob not be brought together to kind of make her and her kids look very nice? Because going to a convention is a big deal for young families. It's nearly like going on a holiday, going to the convention. It was for me as a kid, But to see this woman, this poor woman, and she's with these poor kids, I was just a sense of sadness just came over me, as to why do we let this happen in this day and age? And you have all this money and you don't help your own. If you don't help your own, you don't help anyone. That's really it. And I just found it really sad. And that's the way the organization is. It's take your time, take your money, take your life, take your family, and they give nothing back except this carrot. Oh, here we have a carrot in front of you. Paradise. It's coming. It's really soon. See. But back. Oh, it's always there. It's always imminent, but it never comes.
Yeah. Like I spoke to my ex before she left me, and he said, what have Watchtower ever given to you? And they say, they give me knowledge of the Bible. I say, you don't agree with them, because she don't agree with the blood doctrine and a lot of stuff she didn't agree with. And, they will change it. You say, well, they're giving me current understanding. and they're giving me help. They said, they give you help to go to the meeting. That benefits them. They give you help to go in field service. It's benefit them. They help you to log into JW.org to donate. It benefits them. What they have given to benefit you. And in the end, she came out to, she given me a current understanding, but they will disfellowship me if I tell them that I disagree. They literally don't give you anything. So I gave my patrons the link to call in if they wanted to. But if someone wants to call in, since my patrons are sleeping, they can use this if they want to call in and say.
Well, we spoke for 2 hours. Geez, that time flew by. I'm sorry for everyone having to listen to us rant on here. Because it's been a long interview.
Yeah. It's it's a long to talk about. But I'm going to do another video, because Watchtower, they always say, like, no one's making money from this. And that's true, maybe. But they forget the organization can make money. It's like a virus. It's just live on and live on. So even if the governing body members don't make money, the organization making money. It's still a money scheme.
That we don't make well. So for the organization, they do make an awful lot of money. Like when Stephen Letts came on, I can't remember what year it was. It 2015 or something. He says there's more money going out than there is coming in. When he said that, within a couple of weeks, they made $30 million.
Who?
The Watchtower Corporation.
Okay.
They got $30 million in donations just by Stephen Letts said there's more money going out than there is coming in. That's the power they have over the members. So all the members, especially the particularly rich ones, take out the money, write a check, send it in. Now, I hope that helps you out. That helped them out a lot.
So I'm preparing another thing I'm going to be interview with XJW Critical Thinker with JC, because I have a funny story. We had in Norway a secret Bethel, and it was a sawmill, and we were making lumber to kingdom halls.
Yeah.
So but we were only making 2x8s, and we don't use 2x8 when we build kingdom halls. So in the end, I asked about that, and they said it's because that's what we get the best price for. So according to what the elders told me, the elder in charge, they were selling it. So we're working full time, cutting up lumber into 2x8 that went out to the market.
Right.
So it's possible that at one point they were actually, I believe that at one point they were making for kingdom halls, but when I was there, we were only making 2x8 because, and I quote, that's what we get best price for.
Wow. This is crazy, isn't it?
Yep. And the Watchtower closed it down afterwards. So fair to mention that too. But at least when I was there, it was a for-profit Bethel.
Yeah, it's funny that the stuff that they do, these projects they have, and they're all supposed to be driven by Jehovah and directing the organization. They built a headquarters here in Ireland, right, just south of Dublin, the capital, in a town called, in a county called Wicklow, right, and in a beautiful, lovely spot, because Wicklow is known as the Garden of Ireland, so it's a lovely spot up there. And we all got a chance to go up for a day to help build this headquarters, right, or Bethel, Ireland's own Bethel, and we built it back in the 90s, I believe. I can't remember how old I was. Was I 15 or 16? I think I was 16. So it was 1993. We built it. It's still there. We still own it. I think they tried selling and couldn't really sell it. I think they tried to sell it during the collapse, the financial collapse in 2007, 2008, but they still have it. And every now and again, they change the address of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Ireland between the Wicklow address and an address in Dublin, which is the Kingdom Hall in Dublin in Swords. And it's not being used. I think they sometimes have meetings where they have elders there. So you have this big, huge Bethel that we all built, sitting there in a beautiful spot in Ireland, and it's not really useful to any business because it's kind of in a scenic part of Ireland, but not really in an industrial area. So we want a big, huge kind of compound. And then, so the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses for Ireland is now the UK. So, and then they built Chelmsford, the Soul Mill Hill. So it's just kind of, which is a smaller again. So they've kind of reduced all the time, and they sell all these properties for millions. They make them for only hundreds of thousands, so they really make a huge profit. And it seems to be a great way to make money, but you can't really do it all the time. You kind of have to stagger when you start building things, because it's not really good practice, because people will kind of cop on. The JWs will cop on if they realize that, oh, we're building all the time, but then they're just selling these properties. But it's a construction company as well, where they're making an awful lot of money just from building, because it's free labor, and all it is build at cost. They're not taxed on it, and they can sell it off again for an awful handy money and move on to the next project, reduce if need be. because maybe parts of it were too big. Because as you can see, they're reducing a whole load of them. Because why they want to reduce them is because they're getting rid of the printing, and the printing took up a huge amount of space. But look what they're doing now. They're making this big, huge studio in the US. They're making one down in Australia. At least some type of one. They're looking for auditioners and all the rest. So you can be sure that they're going to be doing something similar in various countries, maybe in the UK as well. And they can have smaller facilities because all they need is a studio and a couple of cameras, and put people in there and then make up mock sets and have them run around or whatever, and pretend that they're in paradise. It's just funny how they portray paradise. It's all realistic scenes and places on planet Earth. They're all beautiful already. We don't need to go somewhere else to enjoy paradise. I mean, one of the places I really want to go to is Norway, because Norway, in my view, is paradise, especially when you kind of get up there more north and it's all this water and the mountains. It's it's scenery that I'm not used to, because I'm from Ireland and we don't really have mountains. All we have lakes, and we have sea, and we have flat ground and a little bit of hills,
Yeah.
and leprechauns, a couple of leprechauns.
Yeah. No, Norway is a great country. I think it's literally one of the best country in the world to live in.
The only thing is you lack beaches, don't you? You lack beaches. It's kind
Yeah,
of
we don't have beaches.
yeah, which is really strange.
Yeah, we have not far from here. There's a beach with sand, but normally we don't have that kind of beaches.
Yeah, and Rihanna say there, Norway is like a fairy tale. It really is, That's a place where they could have filmed some of Lord of the Rings if they wanted to. It's that kind of scenery,
Yeah. No, it's weird. It's actually sad, the whole Jehovah Witness thing, because there's a bunch of people. I try to explain it this way. Imagine if you're in an abusive relationship and someone's abusing you, but cult is the narcissist teach other people how to be abusive, and they don't know it, and they teach other people. So you have this training, like a witness, you're supposed to go out and look for someone that lost someone, a grieving widow. And that's what narcissists, sociopaths do, explore people's weaknesses. But we were trained to do this, and we meant well, but we were learning manipulative techniques, theocratical warfare, all of this shit. So it's really sad. If they would just be the nice guys, then Watchtower, if you would be the nice guys, me and Jason would stop doing this.
Yeah, it's simple as that. Just all you have to be is a little bit nice. I don't have an Irish accent, Chrissy. Just so you know, this isn't an Irish accent. It's just a draw.
Yes. Well, it's time to go home now, but someone asked about my wife, and she's down in the kitchen. But she made a video, and I want her to make more videos, but she says she don't know what to talk about. But I said she should talk about how it is to be the worldly spouse. So if you have some ideas what she should talk about, please leave a comment about that. Because I think there's a lot of people that find a nice guy or a nice woman and think, oh, it's too good to be true. And then they just realize, oh, this person grew up in a cult. And it's a big problem.
But see, I always like the outsider's point of view, and their view of us, especially, Jonas, as activists, that work really hard in what we do, is how did they see that, or how do they view us as people, and do they think we're kind of a little bit, why did you do this, why don't you just move on? Because I think about the whole moving on, and I've been told that many times, especially by my own friends that have never been Jehovah's Witnesses, move on, just get on with your life. And I think, yeah, I could, but there's also the side is where, you move on from the things you can't change. For example, you move on when someone in your life died, because you can't change it. It's gone. It's done. That's the way things are. but if you can change something, then you can choose either to move on if you want, and you don't want to change, you want to leave people go, but then you don't move on if you want to change something. So for example, my mom and my sister don't talk to me. I have 3 nephews, one that thinks I'm the most evil thing, and the other 2 that don't believe that I actually exist. I would love to change that and let them know that actually, do you know what, I'm kind of a nice guy. Anyone that knows me is actually kind of likes me. You know, I don't hurt people, I'd be a good uncle to you if you gave me the opportunity, or I'd be a good brother to you if you gave me the opportunity, and I'd be the good son I always was to you if you give me the opportunity. So at least I have to keep trying to do that as long as they're breathing, or at least I'm breathing, or at least something changes in between. And that's what I'd love to see, like your wife's point of view, if she's as a non-JW, is what she would think about that kind of aspect of the work we do, and is it worthwhile from her perspective, or would she see this as something that, you know, maybe there's a point you got to move on from it, or I don't know.
Yeah, please write in the description what you think she should talk about. Hope she does. She has a lot of really interesting things to say. She just look at the religion and blur out with really obvious things from an outsider's perspective that I'm a creative person, but I wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
So she has a lot of smart things to say, but she's shy. She feels that she's not an expert, but actually everything she says is really smart. Is Apostle Babe Linda here? Hello. Yeah, no, she's not here. So, time to move on. Thank you for coming.
Oh, no.
We should do this more time. Now it's Apostle Babe.
Okay.
Hello.
What? Hi,
Hello.
You can hear me. Good. Okay. Yep. I won't take very long. Hi, it's me, Apostle Babe Linda James. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be able to speak with you and Jason. Both of you have given me so much information. It has been priceless. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Both of you have done it in your own unique ways, and it's been priceless to me and to my recovery, because when I get to understand the process that the organization is doing behind the curtain, it helps me make sense of what happened to me when I grew up in this organization, which I was always in confusion. I just couldn't figure out what was going on and what they were saying and why. And you know why, but understanding now helps me make sense of that nightmare that I was raised in. So thank you so much.
Yeah. But we're talking, the theme this time is the cruelty of Jehovah Witness Judicial Committee. Do you have something to tell about that?
I do. Okay, so let me just start off by saying I was never baptized because I grew up in special ed. So I thought that I was just too stupid. But the fact is, I just could not make sense of the study, and I tried to get baptized twice. So take me back to when I was 16. I was 16 years old, had intimacy with a worldly boyfriend who was studying to become a JW, and then they broke us up, and I was put on what they called at the time public reproof. Now, this was 1980. They announced it from the pulpit. So-and-so has been put on public reproof for behavior unbecoming of a Christian. Even though I did not ever meet with the elders, somehow they came to this conclusion. And this act, when they speak from the platform like this is a form of public shaming, which is so the characteristics that cults will use to coerce people, to shame them into the behavior they want them to use. The elders told me that Jehovah God would not even hear my prayers. To me, this was one of the most abusive things you could say to a person.
But what would you say? Why would you say something like that to someone? I mean, how can you, as a normal, I will say, how can you, as a human being, be able to know what God can or cannot listen to? It's just ludicrous.
Yeah,
I agree, but
you
go
were
ahead,
not
Jonas.
you were not baptized as a
Correct.
Jehovah Witness. Because
Correct.
when they talk to the government, they say, "Oh, we're allowed to do this because they are members," but you were technically not a member.
I realize that now. I didn't try to dodge this. I just didn't make it all the way through because I needed things to make sense. And the way I learned in my special ed classes is that you learn one thing and then you go to the next step on your own timing. So when I had a Bible study, I couldn't get something and they said, "Let's just move along, you'll get it later." So I would try that, and then 2 things later, it still didn't make sense and I needed it to work. Anyways, to top it all off, I had a mini nervous breakdown at that age as well. So what led to me being put on public reproof was that when having this mini nervous breakdown, they took me to a therapist who was a Jehovah's Witness in Redland Hills, California. I had no clue he was a Jehovah's Witness. I thought, oh, wonderful, I can finally open up to somebody. No. I told him I went to see my boyfriend again because, I'm stupid in love. And he looked at me and said, "Well, I am an elder, so I am now having to report you to headquarters." And he did. A licensed therapist. I was 16 and knew no better.
Yeah, you're too young to realize that what he did was extremely illegal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that led to my being put on public reproof. It was just a horrible thing. So yeah, I'm not real thrilled on these judicial committee situations. They have no business judging people. But I, at that age, and most people that are indoctrinated, do believe that these elders have been placed there by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
That's my point now. You were not a Jehovah Witness, and they violated your privacy, and they slandered you. Watchtower tried to claim that apostates slander them, but you were a child, and you were not a Jehovah Witness, and they say that you were publicly reproved, and then he had to report you to Watchtower. And what did they do? Did they take a mental note? No, they took a written note.
Yes.
There's no one on Bethel sitting memorizing everything people that's reported. They take a written note. So there is a written note about you today, because they don't throw it away.
Yes.
From a licensed therapist.
Yes. And see, 2 months before my time of intimacy with my boyfriend, a school friend of mine was murdered by William Bonin, who was a serial killer in Los Angeles, California. Why my parents didn't think to sit down with me and maybe have a talk about this. So I'm saying I believe that led to my mini nervous breakdown and led to me being willing to be intimate with a boyfriend of mine and then to do other things very carelessly because of this traumatic event that happened in my life. Anyways, nobody seemed to think about that, like that this might even affect me, that a friend of mine was murdered by William Bonin. His name was Charles Miranda, someone I knew from school, very close to at school.
Yeah. Yes, so this is, I'm glad you tell this story, because this is one of the things I'm asking the government, informing the government of. In the Shepherd of Flock book, there's rules about when a child that's not a Jehovah Witness commits a wrongdoing, how it should be treated, and how they should put it in a file. You have to read Elder's book yourself if you don't trust me, but there are rules about how to gather information and also how they violate privacy. Because if you, as a non-Jehovah Witness member, if you talk to your parents, or if you talk to the elders and said, I had did so-and-so with my boyfriend, he will go straight and tell all the other elders. They will inform the congregation that you've been reproved. and then they will take notes, and all of this about a person that's not a member.
Yes.
It is a crime, I would say that. And
it seems that they somehow followed what you're talking about as far as me being a non-JW in standing by way of baptism, because what I've gathered later is that the way the elders got this information was by having my mother ask me questions like, will you stop seeing this boyfriend of yours? And I said no, because I thought that she's asking me this question as if I would be willing to stop seeing him. No, I said no. I was stupid in love and didn't want to stop seeing him. I'm 16, he's my first love. So I was never set in front of a jury of 3 elders and asked questions. They got the information from my mother and told my mother to ask me the questions. And then they took it back to the elders, and that's how they concluded with their, I'm on public reproof. It's just so bizarre.
yeah, but think about this Watchtower. And when I was a Jehovah Witness, I would defend them, of course. And when it comes to not reporting to the police, I would say that, well, we have it's confidentiality. We can't tell people. And Watchtower say, if we told someone, they could sue us. But basically, how did they treat your they were spying on you through your mother. Mm-hmm. They mm-hmm. were talking about with all the elders, most likely the circuit overseer, and this other elder that was a licensed therapist. They do not respect people's privacy or confidential material. It's just when it comes to reporting it to police, then it's like, oh, we can't tell anyone, but we can tell. If you tell me something, I can give you one example. If I go to, if I were an elder, you can, well, okay, let's say I'm a husband and my marriage is struggling. I go to the elders and say, I was at a strip club, but I don't want to tell my wife, but I tell you since you're my friend. Nothing happened. Well, he will tell the other elders. They will have a meeting with me. If the stripper were having a lap dance against my knee, that's porneia. Then they will tell my wife that she's free to remarry, but nothing more than that.
Oh my God.
Then if she divorced me, they will tell the congregation in different ways, how they have these marking talks and stuff like that. But they make sure the congregation knows she's free to remarry. So from me telling one elders that I did a mistake, went to a strip club, he will tell the other elders, they will tell my wife, and then they will tell the congregation that she was free to remarry. While in fact, it was only a visit at a strip club and a lap dance. So,
perfect example of non-confidentiality is what you're talking about, correct?
Yeah, I have to make a video about this because there's so much that lawyers can't use that they can't see when they can't read between the lines like we do.
Yes,
yeah, because this is what frustrates me as well. It's like, with the Catholic Church, if you're a penitent and you go into the confessional box, it's between you and the priest. That's it. There's no other priest. It's not like he's quickly writing it down and putting it in the file or showing it to another priest and saying, "Look, this is what Jonas just told me here. I don't know what we should do about it." Well, maybe we should get on to the Church of Ireland and see what to do. So there is nothing. It's between you, the priest, and God is how they view it in the Catholic Church. But in Jehovah's Witnesses, right, if you do some wrong, the wrong is, first of all, investigated by 2 elders, or first of all, you might confess. Let's say you confess to an elder, confidentially with that elder. That elder then will go to another elder and have a chat with them. And then they'll meet at the next Thursday meeting. And after the meeting, they'll have an elder meeting. And they'll all discuss Jonah's sin that he committed, or the sin I committed, or the sin you committed, Linda, if you were baptized. And so all the body of elders now know what you did wrong. And then they then assign 3 elders to have a judicial committee with you, right? And then let's say there was certain sins, because there are certain sins that they just really don't know how to deal with. So what they do is they then get the CO involved. And then the CEO involved might say, actually, you know what, the two of you need to go and you need to contact the branch. And so then they get the branch involved. So then you have someone else. And then now all of that's done. Then you actually, they judge you, you say the judicial committee, and then you appeal it. So what happens now is the same sin now is shared with 3 new elders. So then they get to hear all about it. And then afterwards, when you're still going to get this fellowship, because it's very rare that you're ever going to win an appeal, it's all just set up to make you feel like you can do something about it. But you can do nothing about it. So then after it's all done, it's all put in a file. It's all put in an S77 form. It's put in a file in your Kingdom Hall, but it's also sent to the service department in New York.
Yes.
Or not New York, but at least up at the branch. And then they get it electronically, and then it's put into a system called Hub, and that's accessible by a certain number of elders around the world. So how many people can actually get access to your sin that you initially just told one elder? Well, it's a countless amount of individuals. And to your point, Jonas, there is no confidentiality at all. So they can't claim clergy penance and privilege when there is really it's much more than that. That's like saying, like, if you go to your lawyer and you share your information with your lawyer, can he share them with every single lawyer on the planet just because they're lawyers? That's not clergy penance and privilege. You can't. But that's what the Jehovah's Witnesses are claiming. You know,
yes. What I'm watching them do is change the definition that you just spoke is the true definition of clergy tenant privilege by way of the Catholic canon to something totally different that works for the organization. They are changing the rules, changing the definition of clergy tenant privilege, confidentiality, and it showed up during the Montana court case.
Yeah.
It was horrible. But I'm glad you explained that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think more people need to kind of understand it, especially because there's more and more court cases where they're trying to claim that, especially in the child abuse cases like the one in Montana. And you can be sure that Zolkin is going to be talking about it more in more cases, and even in this new documentary, I'm sure that's going to come up. Well, I don't know for sure, but it's possible that it could come up. But it is that clergy penance and privilege it's an abuse of privilege. But it's the same way they abuse every rights they have. They abuse that privilege. They abuse the privilege of doing what they want in a judicial sense. It's just such an abusive organization in so many ways. And that just brings back to the whole point of what this was all about. It's all just been an extremely cruel organization, a cruel judicial process that does nothing for the benefit of the victim, but everything for the benefit of the organization.
Absolutely. And I believe this was before the HIPAA laws kicked in to where I could hold this therapist accountable. And to be honest, it wasn't until the last 10 years, and I am now 57, that I realized what an atrocity had been done to me. Because when you're raised under abuse, you don't recognize it as abuse until you learn what abuse is. Otherwise, that's just what life was like, you know?
Yeah, I think it's normal. In all fairness,
precisely.
Some elders are really nice, and I think we should just mention that also.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't. Thank you for saying that, Jonas. Thank you.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
So, but like the Watchtower structure, it's all about what's good for Watchtower, and it's basically not based on the Bible. If they were basing it on the New Testament, they would actually not have all the problems they have.
I
If they
agree.
would obey the law of the land, and they would, not being perfect, and that's not what I say, but if they would like focusing on obeying the law of the land first, and direction from an American printing company second, because a lot of problem here in Europe and Scandinavia and stuff like that is because they're written rules based on American understanding of American legislation, and then when it comes here, it's like, this is from Jehovah. It's not necessarily, not even that the governing body meant it to be taken as legislation, but the interpretation locally is like, this is from Jehovah, and it goes beyond Norwegian legislation, and no one have the guts to say no, because you'll lose your position. I don't think every time you get these stupid directions that are maybe makes sense from an American legal point of view, that it was meant to be legal advice in Norway, but the elders and they don't dare to disagree, so it's just treated like it would be a legal advice in Norway. That's my impression.
May I ask you gentlemen a question?
Yes.
I tend to believe that the elders, for the most part, are being deceived as they are being informed what to do and why. So when they call headquarters and find out if something is to be reported or not, I notice that the headquarters will say something to the effect of, "You are under no obligation to report." That really isn't saying don't report. It's saying you're really under no obligation.
Okay,
I just think that they're, go ahead, Jason.
No, sorry, continue the question before I answer.
So I believe that with the elders being ordinary men without a theological training or training that is what society at large would expect from a elder or a person in a clergy position, do you see elders as being almost as deceived as the members have been to get them to do the dirty work of the governing body?
Yeah, I believe so, especially in my understanding, especially with the child abuse. It's they are completely and utterly manipulated to think that they have some sort of control and that the organization is considering their interests and the interests of their congregants. So, for example, in the Watchtowers, if you look at the elder manual for particular, and they now have a full section on child abuse. But you'll see that they never commit to anything. That whole elder manual is written by lawyers for the most part. It's a lawyer written book. But at the same time, it's got an awful lot of wishy-washy language in it, so that you really can't really make out what exactly they do, what their policies really are. And so, especially in the cases of child abuse, they have to phone the branch as to what to do. They're directed to phone the branch, and that they do not shield anyone for the consequences of their sins. But not shielding someone from the consequences of the sins is basically just standing aside, not actually taking any action. You're saying, I'm not taking any action to prevent him from the consequences of his crimes. But you're not saying that we actually push them forward to get justice, or to send them towards the police station, so they do. It's an inaction. And I do believe that the elders don't see the manipulative wording that there is, and they are then absolutely shocked when something happens to them, when they do something they thought was right, but they have no authority to do so. For example, there's two cases in Ireland, two separate cases, right? The first one most of you are aware about is the one when the Sunday Business posted the article in 2017 where two elders were deleted. One of them had reported the crime, even though the branch told him not to report it, but he went and reported it because he said he had the legal duty to do so. Now, he had misinterpreted the law at the time because the mandatory reporting law hadn't been in effect. It didn't come into effect until later that year, or the following year. So they were both deleted as elders. He was deleted because he reported it, and the other elder was deleted because he was the coordinator of the body of elders, and he lacked soundness of mind. Basically, he wasn't able to control the situation.
Precisely.
And they wanted to do this so that any of the other elders would just fall into line, right? So that's one situation. Then there was another situation involving another elder in a completely different situation, just about, was either earlier this year or late last year. But that same elder, I have been texting him, and his comments to me were just a little bit ridiculous, because I was telling him about whole child abuse, that you cannot report child abuse, and he says, no, you're that's all lies, and you're just lying. And he got really angry, and I'm good friends with his brothers, and I was commenting to his brothers that who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. They're both apostates. You might know them, but he was adamant that, you know, the organization deals with this and we are allowed to report. He was claiming we are allowed to report, right? Sorry, I'm kind of waffling a little bit. But what happened was this woman, who was no longer Jehovah's Witnesses, came to him. It was either earlier this year or it was late last year. She came to him and said she was abused by this man in the congregation. And this elder, what he did was he told her that she should go to the police and report it.
Wow.
So she went to the police and reported it, right? So he had kind of directed her. But, you know, it got back to the branch. The branch found out about it. So the branch deleted him.
Of
But why did the
course.
branch delete him? The branch deleted him because he had directed her to report. Number one. Number two, you know, you don't direct. You say that it's their choice whether they want to report or not. You don't say you should go and report it, right? So that's one mistake. The second mistake is she's no longer a Jehovah's Witness. We don't help Jehovah's Witnesses or non-Jehovah's Witnesses. We help Jehovah's Witnesses. And what you've done now is you've affected one of our current members, even if he is an abuser or an alleged abuser. So he was deleted. And yeah, he's still believed, and it's most likely he'll never be reinstated as an elder because they don't reinstate any elders that have reported child abuse without their authorization. So that's two cases just in Ireland. And Ireland is a very small country. We only have about 6,000 or 7,000 Jehovah's Witnesses, so not very many. And yes, yeah, we've had two that are being deleted, and you can be sure that that's happening all around the world, that type of behavior. And the protection of children is first and foremost, and they avoid child abuse. Well, I tell you, if they avoid child abuse, they absolutely detest to the utterest anyone reporting it. You know,
Yes,
so avoid
yes.
child abuse all you want, but you detest anyone reporting it.
Which
So-
really equals dragging Jehovah's name through the mud.
Oh, that's how they see it, but it's not really, because you
I agree.
You look at it, if they had at the very beginning, we'll say go back whatever amount of decades that child abuse first started coming out, that they had an opportunity to report this straight away. And if they had reported this as an organization at the very least, they could claim that, look at us, we report child abuse. This is what we do. And this is what we do as an organization. We're not like the Catholic Church or the Boy Scouts or any of these other organizations that have been covering it up for years. And you know what? We as activists wouldn't have anything on that side of things to be able to concern ourselves, which would be a fantastic area not to be concerning ourselves with. We could just focus on the other side of things, which is the shunning things and the other harmful aspects. But unfortunately, we have to deal with this sad sadistic side of things as well.
Yes.
Yeah, we do have other things to do than fighting with Watchtower. I just want them to be nice. So I'm talking to the lawyer that represented Gry and see if he wants to be an interview, because it's kind of interesting, and also maybe we can help him a little because he don't understand the universe. But what happened in Norway is that they treated this like a contract. Like I don't know what it's called in British, like contract law, that this party had an implied contract with that party and Watchtower violated it. And that's true, because no Jehovah Witness would say that you will be disfellowshipped for rape. So, and also if you repent and talk to the elders, everything is okay. So they violated her contract. But when you do that argument, you can put a lot of more stuff in that contract when you grow up, you know, when they say that repentance, being reasonable, not throwing the first stone, all of these things, that's in the and the fact that Watchtower also treated like a contract, because it used to be that the disfellowshipping process was different based on what year you were baptized.
Correct.
Because the questions you say yes to is, according to Watchtower, a contract.
Agreed to upon
and when
publicly.
they say that this is a contract, and they say you can't take us to court, well, you made contract with someone that's not 18 years old. If I make a contract with someone, a grown-up, and we both sign it, it can still be invalid in court, for a million reasons. Like,
Yes,
if I ask you to waive your civil rights for the rest of your life, that's not an honorable contract. And also, obviously, any contract signed by a child is invalid per default. So I really hope Watchtower take this to Supreme Court and they lose.
But
it's not. I cannot bet that they will lose, because people don't see the complexity in a Watchtower structure.
Well, I think what it is it's so convoluted and purposely convoluted that it's too. It can be too complicated for them to have the time to be able to understand this. I think that's why it is. But we are all in a contract. When we became Jehovah's Witnesses, and we said those two questions. We said the questions of that we recognize Jehovah and Jesus and all the rest, and that our dedication and our baptism identify us as Jehovah's Witnesses. We've made a contract, and that contract was set up because we are asked a whole lot of questions, first of all, by the elders, and they screen us through all of those questions to be able to verify. So they do an awful lot of work, and the Watchtower says that, right? And so then you have that, and then afterwards what you have is you then stand in front of hundreds of people, and you answer those two questions, by answering yes to them in front of a whole bunch of people. So it's all kind of a legally convoluted system that we have to follow to become qualified as Jehovah's Witnesses. So
yes,
we are in the contract, but that's kind of come back to bite them in the arse as well. And that's why they changed the questions. I'm sure some of the viewers are aware of this, but that's why they changed the questions, because once, I brought the Watchtower to a kind of a tribunal, kind of similar to what Gree had done in the initial one. I did something similar here in Ireland, and I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And now they found that quite shocking, is because they'd never had an apostate claim to be a Jehovah's Witness. But I says, well, I am a Jehovah's Witness because I dedicated my life to Jehovah. And I recognize that my dedication and baptism identify me as a Jehovah's Witness, and I recognize that also that my dedication and baptism can't be revoked, and if neither of them can't be revoked, I am a Jehovah's Witness. And then, as a Jehovah's Witness, I can't actually come out of it because of that dedication. So they changed the questions. The questions no longer work anymore, because those questions. So now anyone that's been baptized since March 2019, the questions are so different, so that they can now you make your dedication, but your dedication portion of it no longer identifies you as Jehovah's Witness. It's only the baptism part. And
interesting.
It means that they can kind of in a sense say, well, your dedication will always be to God, and any decision you make is between you and him. Your baptism is just a symbol of that, so it doesn't really mean anything. So we can say you're no longer Jehovah's Witness, and that's really kind of the angle. But it just shows how legalistic they are and how quickly
it is truly
almost they can just change the rules, as to how you become a member. And it's not really about God, it's about how we can be one up on the apostates, because
yes.
It's really kind of silly in a way. Whereas the easier thing would be to do is, is say, look, you're no longer a member, and that's fine. And I'll say, look, I don't mind if I'm no longer a member. Just give me my family back and we'll all be fine. I won't say anything about you. You don't say anything about me, and everybody be in good place. But no,
wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it, Linda? Be lovely.
Wouldn't it be lovely? Yes, I'm ready to break into song. Wouldn't it be lovely?
Yeah.
But no, they have to manipulate us through our family. And I have no respect for anybody who tries to screw anybody over using their family. Yet we are to respect them and do whatever necessary to get us back in good standing so that we can have a relationship with our family. And many of us do. And there is no shame in that, because you're playing the game. But it's wrong. It's
Linda,
very wrong.
Linda, you're right about everything. Thanks for calling in. And you got the last word. So
thank you. Thank you.
Good night.